Add to the, oh, here we are. Okay, now you can see me. Duh. If it wasn't for a mistake, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. So sorry, guys. Okay, so now we're going to talk about postpartum depression. Well, actually, no, I'm going to go pull up let me get this, let's see. Let me get her, this is from her actual, hang on, her actual appeal. I have the appeal over here, and we're going to pull that up as well. So let me pull that up. So her first appeal was in 2018. Okay, and I'm going to pull that up, and we're going to talk about it. Okay. Oop, you got to spell it right, silly, silly. All right. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. It's pretty today outside. It's so nice. Now, here is the breakdown of Michelle's first appeal. Now, we know when you read the appeals, a lot of the things that happen in the courtroom is actually in the appeal. So back in 2018, 2017, and even when this case first happened, there was not really a lot of courtrooms that actually had live streaming. You just didn't see that back then. This is kind of a relatively new thing. So we don't have any actual footage of the testimony in court. All we can do is read from the appeals or transcripts. So here we go. Let's talk about it. What was the appeal? What were the arguments that she made? What the court reviewed? Why the appeal failed, which is always important, and the exact legal reason. Here we go. This came from the Iowa Court of Appeals, and it's the opinion from the iowacourts.gov. Okay. Michelle Kehoe filed her first appeal after being convicted of first-degree murder for killing 2-year-old Seth, attempted murder for attacking 7-year-old Sean. She did not argue she was innocent. Instead, she argued her trial attorney was ineffective. Now, we know that that always happens in these cases. The first thing they holler is, my counsel was ineffective. We always hear that, right? Always. So hold on a second, guys. Let me make sure this is actually working right over here. Oh, Lord. Okay. Sometimes I have to make sure that the sound is actually working right because sometimes it's not. So hang on a second. Let me make sure it's right. Hang on. Okay, it is. All right, it's working. Good. We're good. So, she ineffective counsel. So, her appeal and her arguments. She claims that she was mentally incompetent. Now we know that before a person goes to court anytime, they've already had a competency hearing. Okay, we know this. She was held competent to stand trial. She said her attorney should have argued that she had postpartum depression and that she had mental health issues and that was not competent to stand trial. But we know that she had had a competency hearing already. She had been tested by experts and she was deemed competent to stand trial, or else they would have never had the trial. If a defendant is not if they're not competent to stand trial, they don't have the trial. They just wait until they can bring them back to being competent. So she also raised diminished capacity or insanity defenses. She applies that her mental state should have been used to reduce or eliminate a criminal responsibility. Now, present more mental health evidence. She claimed her attorney should have brought in more experts, more psychological evaluations, and more mental health history. Now, what the court says is that here's what the court says. They examined both her mental health evaluations, they examined her expert testimony, they examined the trial's transcripts, they examined Sean's testimony, and they examined the forensic evidence and her behavior before, during, and after the crime. Now, when you are making up the story that a stranger stopped them or a stranger attacked them, slashing everybody's throats, then you are competent because you're able to make up a lie. You're trying to hide what you did. So that shows that she was competent at the time, right? The appellate court rejected every argument, and here's why. The court found no medical records, no diagnosis, no symptoms, no postpartum timeline. Her youngest child was 2 years old. There was zero evidence that she had postpartum depression or a postpartum psychosis. Now, We know that in the time since her trial and today, there's been a lot more study about postpartum depression and really how long can these people have postpartum depression? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? How long does this go on? There's a lot of discussion about postpartum depression, and that's I think today well, Lindsay Clancy's going to be the perfect example of that because Lindsay Clancy's going to claim that she had postpartum depression and that she was in a psychotic episode and that that's why she killed her children and jumped out a window. Now, Lindsay Clancy is going to plead guilty by reason of insanity. That is what she's going with. She's going to plead this, and then they'll have to do a hearing on what is her was she insane or was she not insane? So it'll kind of be like Letitia Stouch's trial. Just think about that when we're thinking about it. Now, hang on a second here because I'm going to pull this up for a minute. Okay. Let's see about postpartum depression. I want to know at what point would postpartum depression not be an issue? Okay, so let's talk about the treatment, etc. So postpartum depression for women is it's viewed as here we go. Stop that. Oh, look at this stuff popping up. No, I don't need that. It's trying to give me treatment. I don't need treatment. So postpartum depression anxiety, if it is a depression that is brought on, and it's usually by the let's say it starts out as a depression after they have these children. Now I've never suffered with it, so I don't really know much. So it is highly treatable, right? The most effective approach usually combines psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, medication, which is antidepressants, and a specialized PPD medications, and just strong social support. Okay, so early intervention is key to ensuring a maternal well-being, and a healthy mother-infant bonding. So the first line of defense being talk therapy. So cognitive behavior therapy just focuses on identifying and changing negative thought patterns and unhelpful behaviors. Interpersonal psychotherapy, which also works, helps to improve communications and navigate relationship changes or conflicts that often arise after having a baby. Because we do know that there's a lot of tension that goes on between mom and dad and a baby. Some men are jealous of the baby after the baby comes because the mother spends all the time with the baby. And that's disgusting, but it does happen. We've heard of this happening before. It's not new, it's been out there a long time. Healthcare providers may prescribe medications to help balance the brain chemicals that affect your mood. Traditional antidepressants, like the SSRIs, are commonly prescribed. Many are generally considered safe while breastfeeding, though your doctor will weigh the benefits versus the risk. Keep in mind, these can take several weeks to become fully effective. There's also specialized medications that they've made for this particular diagnosis. It's very important to have support and self-care if you are diagnosed with postpartum depression. Now, let's talk about the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis because she's claiming this is what was wrong with her and this is why she did this. And postpartum, hang on, okay, postpartum psychosis. All right, here we go. Let's take a look here. Now, there are two. We're gonna look at it. This postpartum psychosis is symptoms. Okay, let's talk about the symptoms of postpartum psychosis. This condition affects a person's sense of reality, causing hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and other behavior changes. In severe cases, people with PPP may attempt to harm themselves or their newborn. This condition is treatable, and early treatment increases the odds of any outcome. So, it is a severe, reversible mental health condition that affects people after they give birth. This condition is rare, but it's also dangerous. Now, here's what's important about psychosis versus postpartum depression. People with the psychosis have a much higher risk of harming themselves, dying by suicide, or harming their children. Because of this, PPP is a mental health emergency. If you have the symptoms of PPP or near someone who shows signs of it, it's important you seek immediate help. Now, how would they know if they had it? How would they know? I mean, it would have to be somebody in their family noticing things different, because I think if you were in the middle of this psychosis, you would not know, right? Because that's what we know about psychosis. Postpartum psychosis can affect anyone who recently gave birth. While it usually happens within several days of giving birth, now remember, Sean was 7 and the other one was 2 years old. It can happen up to 6 weeks after. Okay, it can happen to anyone who gives birth, but the odds of having it are higher for people with certain mental health conditions. So they've already had a mental health condition. While experts don't know if this condition contributes to or causes, they know that there's a link that causes this. Postpartum psychosis, let's see, it affects between 0.089 and 2.6 out of every 1,000 births in the United States. That means it happens between 320 and 9,400 births each year. Globally, that means it's between 12 million and 352.3 million births. That's a lot. The two main symptoms of the psychosis affect a person's sense of reality and how they understand the world around them. They have hallucinations. They have delusions. They have mood changes like mania or hypomania. The depersonalization of the people around them. They talk about having out of body experiences. They have insomnia. They're irritable or agitation. They have thoughts of self harm. Okay. Now, she's trying to claim that this is what it was with her. Now, we're going to go back over here. She was found mentally competent. Experts evaluated her and found that she understood right from wrong, she could assist in her defense, and she was not psychotic. She was not delusional, and she was capable of planning. See, that destroyed her incompetency claim right there. Her behavior showed planning, not mental illness. The court emphasized that she drove to a remote area, she attacked both children, she cut her throat superficially, and that she had staged the scene. She fabricated a stranger attack, and she gave inconsistent statements. These are organized, intentional actions, not symptoms of postpartum disorders. So, Sean's testimony was devastating to her case. Devastating. Sean testified that his mother attacked them, right? That there was no stranger, and it was clear, and it matched all the forensic evidence. Her attorney, she says, was not effective. The court ruled no competent attorney would raise a postpartum defense with no evidence. That's right, they would not. No insanity defense was supported by the facts. She knew what she was doing. She planned it. No mental health defense was viable. She was not diagnosed with any mental health disorders. Her lawyer acted reasonably. Therefore, her claim of ineffective counsel has failed. Now, she's had two different appeals. The first appeal, the final outcome was they affirmed her conviction, they affirmed her life sentence, and rejected all claims of ineffective counsel. So she lost her first appeal, but then she filed a second appeal. In her second appeal, she claims the lawyers should have argued her mental incompetence. But see, there's no way they could because she was found competent. Lawyers should have used the postpartum. They could not. She was never diagnosed. Lawyers should have used insanity or diminished capacity. They could not because she was tested and she didn't meet that. Lawyers should have brought more experts. Well, how many experts do you need to testify that somebody did not fit the criteria of being postpartum depression or having postpartum psychotic disorders? None, right? There was none. She never had a psychosis. She never had delusions. She was competent. Her actions were planned. So there's no way that her appeal was denied, the conviction was affirmed, and her sentence was upheld. So now we're going to go back and we're going to look at her appeal over here, which I have right here. I'm going to go back up to the top of this one. Hang on, guys. Yeah. So there's a lot of information about this case. But see, Lindsay Clancy's going to try the same exact case. She's going to do the same thing. I don't know that it's going to work because I don't know that any case has ever. Well, let's look up and see. Let's see, has any defendant, let's look it up, won an appeal on postpartum depression. We can see about that. All right. Okay, there have been. So yes, it's been used before. Postpartum depression has been used before, but only in extremely rare circumstances and only when the defendant had postpartum psychosis, not ordinary postpartum depression. So here's what we do know. Courts almost never overturn a conviction on postpartum depression alone because PPD does not cause delusions, does not cause hallucinations, and does not cause breaks from reality. PPD does not meet the legal standard for insanity. Okay? So here's examples of cases where psychosis helped win an appeal. Now listen carefully. This is out of Texas. Andrea Yates, out of Texas, initially convicted of capital murder. Her conviction was overturned on appeal. Reason: improper testimony and failure to consider postpartum psychosis. On retrial, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She is now in a psychiatric facility, not in a prison. That is the most famous example of postpartum depression and an appeal, winning an appeal, having a conviction overturned, and getting a new sentence. Okay. Melanie Blocker Strokes. This is out of Illinois. Influenced appellant rulings. Her case led, here we go, Melanie Stokes Postpartum Depression Research Act and several Illinois appeals courts have since recognized postpartum psychosis as legitimate insanity defenses. I think we'll see more and more of this because now we have seen other cases won with this. Deborah Green out of Kansas. Her appeal raised postpartum psychosis as a factor. While her conviction was not overturned, the appellate court acknowledged that PPP as a legitimate mental state defense. This case is often cited in later appeals. Then we have Lindsay Clancy out of Massachusetts. It is a rare defense. It's not used very often. It's hard to win with that defense, but it's not like they're just let go. I mean, look what had happened to Andrea Yates. She's still in a mental hospital where she will be for the rest of her life. She's not going to just walk out of there one day and live amongst us. Okay, so Lindsay Clancy out of Massachusetts. Now her case is ongoing, but appellate courts have already acknowledged that postpartum psychosis as a potentially exploratory factor. This will likely it will be a major precedence when she goes to court. Now, important distinctions. Here's some important distinctions between the two of them. Let's talk about postpartum depression versus postpartum psychosis because they're not exactly the same. We know, we're going to call it PPD versus PPP. So, PPD does not meet the insanity standards, where PPP can meet the insanity standards. PPD does not cause psychosis. PPP has overturned convictions already. PPD has not been enough to overturn a conviction, and PPP has led to new trials. PPD has not been accepted as a standard in an appellate defense, where PPP has resulted in not guilty by reason of insanity verdict. So yes, it is now used in cases. Where does Michelle Kehoe's case fit in all of this? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Her youngest child was 2 years old. That she was not in postpartum depression with a 2-year-old child. That is not how this works. Her child was too old. Her case did not qualify for either one. She never had delusions. She never had hallucinations. She had no break from reality. Her behavior was organized and staged. She fabricated a stranger attack. So, that is how that is why she did not fit and why she lost on appeal. She's had 2 different appeals. Now I'm going to get off of this over here. Let me go over here and pull this one up. Okay, I'm going to get off of this one. Bear with me for a second. All right, now here we go. And I'm going to pull up something else. Get that off of there. Okay, now I'm going to share the screen, I think. Let me split the screen over here so I can pull up these videos. I'm going to show you some videos over here from this case. It's really, it is a very, very sad case. It really is. You know, there was a lot of news coverage. This case happened in 2009. So her first trial for first-degree murder and attempted murder and child endangerment happened in 2009. Now, through her appeals and her post-conviction relief proceedings, it has been documented widely that she attempted to use postpartum. There is no comprehensive public, like there's not a lot of videos from the courtroom because at that time they did not have live court feeds, etc. So let's go over here and pull up these videos just for a second here. Now, what are you doing here now? Go back to mine. Here we go. Oh. Here we go. Now, this is from the Kehoe sentencing. I want y'all to listen to this. Let me get this set up for you. Now, this is going to be from Tiny Rose Media, which is full credit to Tiny Rose Media. Let me share my screen so you can watch this with me. Here we go. And let's set this up. Okay. Where is that? Well, it's a window still. It's a window. Okay. I think it's big. I think it's right here. All right, now, hang on just a second. Okay, full credit to Tiny Rose Media. Let me set that up, and here we go. All right, so let me put this down here so we can give them full credit. All right. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to watch this right here. And this is when she was being convicted of this crime. So let me go back over here. Here we go, guys. She's been convicted right here. Here we go.
I want to express my deep sorrow. I hope that was for healing. For Sean, for June, for my friends and family.
Thank you. Michelle Kehoe today sentenced to life in prison. Obviously no chance for parole in the state of Iowa.
Good evening, I'm Tara Thomas.
And I'm Ron Steele. Sentencing today in this case, which has gone on for more than a year now, originating in Buchanan County.
Michelle Kehoe will spend life in prison for killing her son Seth. There are 2 additional sentences of 25 years for attempted murder and child endangerment.
Now, those will be served consecutively. She's also been ordered to pay about $150,000 in civil penalties plus court costs. Now, Kehoe found guilty last month in Grundy County. The trial moved there because of all the publicity. Evidence showed that Michelle Kehoe killed her son Seth, then tried to kill her other son Sean in October in 2008 in Buchanan County. Sentencing today was back closer to the scene of the crime in Buchanan County and Independence. News Channel 7's John Wilmer continues our top story coverage tonight. He is live from the Buchanan County Courthouse. John, tell us more about details. This is really one of the most heartbreaking family tragedies I think we've ever had to cover.
That's exactly right, Ron. Michelle Kehoe, her attorney, and even her husband, Gene, all asked the court for mercy when handing down her sentence. The court showed very little, handing down a very stiff sentence, fines, and a 5-year no-contact order for Sean and his immediate family.
I want to express my deep sorrow. I hope now is for healing. For Sean, for June, for my friends and family.
Michelle Kehoe finally broke her silence, apologizing for her actions and asking the court through her attorney for leniency.
She was in despair. She saw no hope at all. The only thing she saw was death. And she saw that as the only solution.
The lives of thousands of people have been affected. None more than the people in this room.
Gene Kehoe also gave a statement talking about what he and his son, Sean, have lost.
Not only has Sean lost a brother, but he has also lost his mother. I have lost my wife and my best friend.
He looks so much, I'm going to stop there for a minute. He looks so much older than she does. That's kind of interesting right there. Here we go. Sorry, guys.
But we do need to remember that this incident is a result of profound mental illness
Jean also asked the court to be gentle when sentencing his
She
wife.
didn't have mental illness.
Everyone should know that Michelle is an excellent mother, in spite of the effects of the mental illness. We hope that where she is going, there is excellent treatment for her, so that she is also able to heal. We still love Michelle as a wife, mother, and friend.
Now, at the end of his statement, Gene Kehoe asked the judge if he could hug his wife after the sentencing. The judge simply said no.
Wow.
Live in Independence, John Wilmer, Eyewitness News, Channel 7.
All right, John, what an emotional day.
That is very sad, and it is very emotional. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the actual, hang on a second, what was this one? Hang on. Let me pull this up over here. Oh, no, I don't think that's the one. Okay, get rid of that one. All right, now I'm going to pull back up her appeal from over here. Now, there were two appeals done. One was in 2011, and one was in 2019. And there's also something that was filed in, I think, 2022. So let me pull it up from over here. And I'm going to share this. Hang on a second. Here we go. Is it this one from 2011? Just a second, guys. No, that's 2019. Let me get this pulled up so we can talk about it. Okay. Now, this is going to be, that's 2019. Just a second. Not that one. There was a lot of information about this case. The one thing that they did not have was an oral argument for this case. That's why I could not show you an oral argument. I wanted to, though. Because I really thought this would be a great case to show an oral argument on, because when you're talking about postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis versus a premeditated murder of children, I would like to hear what questions that the Iowa Court of Appeals, what the justice would have asked her. I think that would have been a great case to have an oral argument on. But there is not one available, so we cannot show that, which is kind of, sad. But all right, that's where we are on that now. Here's what we have. Let me get down here. So the trial and the defense, we know when everything happened. Her sentencing hearing, we know what she also has a no contact order for Sean, the child, for 5 years. I mean, it was pretty sad. So in her first appeal in 2011, the Iowa Court of Appeals upheld her conviction, rejecting claims that her trial counsel was ineffective. Now, here's something else. We talk about Murderpedia a lot. I don't know if you've never seen Murderpedia. Let me show you Murderpedia. I'm going to share the screen. Lots of information. A lot of your most notorious murderers are in Murderpedia. Not every one of them, but the most notorious ones are. And yes, Lindsay, what are you doing? Close. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is also in Murderpedia. So here we go. There she is. Well, let's talk about this for a minute. So the date of the murders was October the 26th of 2008. Now, she was arrested after a suicide attempt on the same day. She was born March 27th of 1973. She had the two children. She used a hunting knife, one of those big hunting knives, to actually attempt to take one child and took the other child's life and her own. Now, this happened over in Littleton or Buchanan County, Iowa, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole in December 15th of 2009. Now, let's go down here and talk about some of these things. In July the 13th of 2011, the Iowa Court of Appeals upheld her 2009 conviction. The Coralville mother was sentenced to life in prison after murdering the 2-year-old and attempting to kill the 7-year-old. In a ruling filed on Wednesday, this was back then, the appeals court struck down Kehoe's contention that her legal counsel, Waterloo-based public defenders Andrea Dreyer and David Stout, were ineffective. Jurors needed just 2 hours to deliberate at the end of a week-long trial in November to put the guilty verdict out there against Kehoe. She is now 38 years old. Kehoe had argued in her appeal that her counsel failed to challenge the constitutionality of Iowa's laws defending the insanity defense. She said her counsel was also ineffective because it failed to request jury instructions on the consequences of not guilty verdict by reason of insanity, or for failing to object to an element of the jury's instructions on the attempted murder charge. All right. In the trial, Kehoe's defense did not contest Kehoe's actions against the children, but had argued that her mental state at the time of the attacks prevented her from being held accountable. The jury ultimately rejected her insanity defense, and in addition to the life sentence for murder, gave her 25 years for attempted murder and 10 years for endangerment. The appeals court cited the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on other cases and ruled that Kehoe's due process rights were not violated by the Iowa law, nor was there any violation of the state and federal cruel or unusual punishment clauses. The court also found that Kehoe's counsel had no duty to object to jury instructions. That's true, though. The appellate court citing, therefore, Kehoe's trial counsel was not ineffective for failing to challenge the constitutionality of Iowa's laws, nor was it yet at fault for not contesting aspects of a jury instruction. According to authorities, Kehoe took 2-year-old Seth and other son Sean, who was 7 at the time, to a remote area near Littleton in northeast Iowa in October of 2008. Police and prosecutors said that Kehoe placed duct tape. Okay, hang on a minute, guys. Now, let me tell you this. This is going to be a little bit of a trigger warning right here when I read this out loud because it involves what she did to them. It's horrible. So, trigger warning right here. Okay. According to the authorities, Kehoe took 2-year-old Seth and her other son, Sean, who was 7 at the time, to a remote area near Littleton in northeast Iowa in October of 2008. Police and prosecutors said that Kehoe placed duct tape over her son's eyes, mouth, and hands, and then cut their throats with a hunting knife she had bought a month earlier. Okay, now let's talk about this. Okay, now this is why she cannot use postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis. She bought the knife a month ago. That is premeditation right there. So if you are premeditating something, you're not in a psychosis, are you? If you are hiding the evidence, you're not in a psychosis, are you? Okay, here we go. Let's keep going. It is horrific. Oh my. She then cut her own throat and Seth died as a result of his injuries, but Sean survived. Police said Kehoe wrote a note to make it appear as though they were abducted by a fictitious assailant, and she made similar claims to investigators before allegedly admitting to the crime. A call left for Mark Smith, the state appellate defender representing Kehoe, was not returned Wednesday, nor was messages left for the public defender's office. The Iowa mom gets life for murder, and this was a little story from December 2015. So we know what she got. Let's go on down here. What else did they have to say? A jury rejected her insanity defense and convicted her of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment. She also received the 10-year sentence for the child endangerment for injuries she inflicted on her older son, who survived for the night locked inside the family van. Okay, now this another horrific situation. Okay, this is an actual. Okay, listen, this is some more trigger warning right here because they're in the family van. She slits the throats. They have duct tape on their hands, mouth, and nose and eyes, right? So they can't fight. They stay in the van all night long. One child has already passed away, but the other one managed to survive with the duct tape over his eyes, mouth, and hands duct taped together overnight. God bless that child. Now, let's keep going here. I'm sorry, it's a lot of trigger warning here. Whew. Okay. She, who survived the night locked inside the family van, Buchanan County Attorney Alan Vanderhart says. Against the wishes of Kehoe's husband, Judge Bruce Dagger also granted an extension of the prosecution's request for a no-contact order which prohibits Kehoe from contacting her surviving son or anyone with him who he lives. Kehoe's son lives with her husband, Gene, who regularly visits his wife until the order. He regularly visited his wife until the order went into effect last April. The judge's decision to continue the no-contact order, which includes a written contact, will remain in effect for 5 years and extends to the father and the son. When the victim's therapist tells us he is ready and it might be beneficial, then at that time, he may revisit the no-contact order. He's pretty fragile right now, says Vanderhart. And I agree, he is fragile. His own mother. He heard his mother take the life of his brother and try to kill him. Yeah, he's fragile, absolutely. Prosecutors countered that Kehoe methodically planned, and she did methodically plan this. She stole the knife the month before. methodically planned to kill her sons and herself, but botched it. The detailed planning shows that she was not legally insane. Iowa Attorney General Andrew Prosser says Kehoe began planning the attack the previous month, buying the knife and the duct tape. According to the testimony, she told her husband she was taking the boys to visit her mother at a nursing home. Police found the handwritten note laying out the details of the attack that Kehoe admitted to writing to support the story that she initially told the police. The note said a man broke into the car when the family stopped at a gas station and forced them to the area where the van was. In the note, Kehoe said that she tried to fight him off with pepper spray, but he knocked her unconscious. Oh Lord, who does this sound like? This sounds exactly like some garbage Letitia Stouch would say, what doesn't it? That somebody attacked, it was somebody else. I'm surprised she didn't say she was great, just like Letitia did. Let's just keep going and see what else comes out. This is horrible, absolutely horrible. Kehoe said she tried to fight him off with pepper spray, but he knocked her unconscious. The note said that Kehoe's lawyer, Andrea Dreyer, asked the court to run the sentence concurrently on account of her extreme mental illness. The judge sentenced Kehoe consecutively for first-degree murder and attempted murder, and concurrently on the attempted murder and child endangerment. So the sentence would represent the two boys. I asked for consecutive time because there was two victims and because the extensive planning and premeditation of these crimes, says Vanderhart. Damn. That's pretty bad, guys. That's pretty bad. Let's see what else there is in this. Okay, listen to this. Kehoe's attorney presented the insanity defense, arguing that she believed she was trying to save her sons from a life of suffering when she cut her throats and her own. Now this sounds like Lori Vallow, trying to save her children from the end times, right? There you go. Her first suicide attempt occurred in 1996, according to the testimony. Prosecutors countered that Kehoe methodically planned to kill her sons and herself, but botched it. The detailed planning showed she was not legally insane. The trial's dramatic highlights came as prosecutors played an audio tape of the surviving son's police statement. The boy, now 8, described how his mother slashed his throat and then moved on to his younger brother. She cut me, the boy said in a high-pitched voice. Police found him covered in dried blood in the family van the morning of October 27, 2008, near a pond east of Littleton, Iowa. Beside the van, the boy's 2-year-old brother lay dead with his throat cut. The boy had locked himself in the van overnight after his mother slashed him and his younger brothers on the previous day and left them for dead. Kehoe then walked to a nearby pond and attempted to kill herself by slashing her throat with the same weapon, a Winchester hunting knife that she bought the month before. She later told defense that mental health experts Marilyn Hutchinson that she had tried to pull out her windpipe, according to the testimony. Okay, bull crap. I'm going to call bull crap on that. When it became apparent she was not going to die, the prosecutor said Kehoe staggered half a mile down the road to the nearest home and told the story that she concocted weeks before of how a stranger abducted the family and killed her sons and tried to kill her. But when the authorities went searching for the stranger, they instead found her 7-year-old son in the car and his younger brother dead outside the driver's side. Do you know where you're injured at? Deputy Stephen Peterson was asking the little boy. Just my throat, the boy says. And then he says, who did this to you? And the little boy says, my mom. The boy said his mother also put duct tape over his eyes, nose, and mouth, but that he pulled them off after his mother left. She was hurting my baby brother, he said. According to the testimony, Kehoe began planning the attack the previous month. Okay, we know that already. Police found a handwritten note. We know that already. Is there anything new on this Murderpedia? Let's keep looking. Okay. All right, hang on a second. This is all the different stories that were put in the paper. Oh, wait a minute. This is from a psychiatrist. Here we go. A psychiatrist who evaluated Kehoe for defense to murder and attempted murder testified on Tuesday that Kehoe's thinking was so colored by depression that she did not have the capacity to know right from wrong. She is asserting an insanity defense. Dr. William Logan was the first defense witness. He recounted Kehoe's childhood trauma in Missouri, where both of Kehoe's parents were alcoholics. Her parents separated when she was 4, and her father died when she was 6 years old. Between the 2nd and the 7th grades, Kehoe was the victim of incest by her stepfather's nephew, and a neighbor. Okay, who does this sound like? Tell me, who does this sound? It sounds like Letitia Stouch, doesn't it? She blamed the reasons for all the things that she did and why she was going to go with insanity defense was because of what happened to her as a child. Hey, Couponin, how you doing, girl? It is a sad case. It's really sad. Um, I just wanted to talk about this case today because of the postpartum depression and how and what these symptoms are and how people misuse it to try to get away with these kind of acts. It's very sad. Um, there's just no way. Now we know Lindsay Clancy is going to use this exact same defense. Now, will it work for her? It may. I don't. The only person that's ever really there's only been 2 people that worked for it. I talked about them just a couple of minutes ago in this case. But it's just so rare. I mean, a psychotic postpartum psychotic it is just so rare. And your child is not 2 years old, right? It doesn't happen that way. She may have been depressed, but it's not postpartum depression that she's suffering with. She may have had mental illness, but it was not from postpartum. So let's keep reading. Thank you for coming in. You know, I always love to see my couponing. Okay. Um, Okay, so Dr. William, okay, so we just talked about that. He recounted her childhood trauma where both of her parents were alcoholics and that her stepfather, nephew, and a neighbor. When she finally told her mother about it, her mother sent her to live with an aunt in Iowa. She appeared to adjust well to her new life, but had her first depressive episode in the fall of 1996. She began to take antidepressants, though it was effective for only a year or so. Kehoe attempted suicide a number of times, the first being in March of 1998. She drank heat and inhaled carbon monoxide. I don't know what heat is, but she drank heat and inhaled carbon monoxide. Her next suicide attempt was a year later, in February of 1999, when she checked herself into a hotel and cut her femoral artery. Oh, wow. Kehoe was hospitalized after each suicide attempt. Her on-again, off-again therapy included up to 44 electric shock treatments. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is so much more. This case is so much more than I realized it was. Okay, guys, trigger warning. Now, she's had all kinds of mental health um, treatments. Did they work? Apparently not. Okay, but I'm not a professional. I'm just here to talk about postpartum depression and how it's misused in these cases. So, here we go. Kehoe's oldest son, Sean, was born in September of 2001. She had miscarriages between 2003 and 2005. Her second child, Seth, was born in October of 2006. In December of 2007, Kehoe's car skidded into the Iowa River. She and her 2 sons were rescued by 4 men who witnessed it. According to Dr. Logan, Kehoe began to experience post-traumatic stress disorder after the river incident. Her condition worsened throughout 2008 following stressors that included her husband losing his job and her ill mother moving to Iowa. From July to October 26 of 2008, Kehoe had thought of suicide, the only way out. According to Dr. Logan's evaluations of her, as in the past, she didn't vocalize her suicidal thoughts to her husband or to those around her. Kehoe began to think that her children might be better off dead, fearing that they may have inherited her mental illness. She plotted to kill her sons and herself for 2 months before carrying out the acts on Sunday, October the 26th of 2008. 3 days after killing Seth, attempting to kill Sean, and while recuperating from her own self-inflicted slash to the throat, Kehoe said that December 2007 the river incident was a suicide attempt, but no one realized it at the time. She also said it was an unforgivable sin. Okay, see, I'm going to go over here and talk about that for a second. I also do believe. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this. Listen, we can never even allow Twitch to come on because now what we have is a bunch of people over here trying to drop other streams and we're not going to have it. So goodbye, Twitch. Sorry. We're just going to remove it. Remove. All right. There we go. Okay, so we've got rid of Twitch. We won't have that problem again. I don't really like that, and I really wish y'all would quit that. I don't know why you want to come in somebody's stream and try to advertise something else. Do you know how disgusting that is and rude? Stop that. I'm not going to allow it. All right, we're going to go back to our case. I also thought when they talked about the car going into the river, I also thought, that was a suicide attempt. She did that on purpose as well. So I wonder if the children realized then that she was trying to take their life. I can't imagine living in a home with this woman every day while the husband's at work. What do you think it was like for these children all day long? This is really sad. Okay. Boy. Jurors saw photographs of the gaping wound of Kehoe's neck. It was a deep cut across her entire throat, through her windpipe. There were other small cuts across a portion of her neck. Before Dr. Logan's testimony, the state called its final witness, the deputy medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Seth Kehoe. Jurors saw a deep gash across half of Seth's throat and multiple bruises on the left side of his head, ear, and the left lower extremities, indicating recent impact of blunt force. Periodically, Kehoe glanced at the autopsy photos of her little boy and just dabbed her eyes. Damn. Now this is from the Daily Ohioan, and this was written October 30th of 2009. Okay, let me see if there's something else in here that's different than what we've already heard. Okay. In his interview, which was recorded October the 27th, the day authorities found him covered in dried blood with his neck cut inside his family's van near the Hook and Linear Pond in Littleton. Authorities found the body of his brother Seth Kehoe nearby. Kehoe's defense attorney is using the insanity or diminished capacity plea, but on the day of the trial, which drew national media attention, the prosecution outlined graphic details that suggested the detailed preparations leading up to the following, the alleged crimes, including how Kehoe may have tried to point the finger to someone else. In this way, the elaborate and meticulous planning of the murder of her children had begun, says Assistant Iowa Attorney General Andrew Presser. Presser told the jury that Kehoe had purchased this Winchester hunting knife and duct tape from the stores in Iowa City, and she also picked a secluded location to carry out this alleged crime. Through the 10 witnesses called Thursday, the prosecutors pieced together for the jury the alleged events of October 26th of 2008. According to the authorities, Michelle Kehoe and her sons left their Colleyville home after she told her husband they were going to go visit her mother in Summer, Iowa, at the nursing home. Instead, she pulled her white van off the road near the pond, where prosecutors say she tried to kill both boys before cutting her own neck. Deborah Hines of Littleton, Iowa, told the jury she heard a knock on her front door around 7:30 on October 27, 2008. An injured person, later identified as Michelle Kehoe, was leaning against her front door and fell inside when Hines opened the door. Kehoe was difficult to understand. Hines said she handed her paper to write a note. Well, she couldn't speak, so she just had to write a note. I don't want to watch no ads. Here's what she wrote on the note. A man killed my boys and tried to kill me, Kehoe wrote. As emergency responders began to arrive, several searched for the two boys. Sean Evans, a member of the Jessup Fire Department, was a member of the first team to find the van and Seth Kehoe's body. I didn't check the body. It was obvious, Evans says, as Michelle Kehoe looked down. He found Sean Kehoe kneeling in the driver's seat of the van. He managed to remove the duct tape and hide in the vehicle, according to multiple witnesses. The state's final witness was Amy Paul-Peter, a criminalist with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations. She walked the jury through the evidence found at the crime scene. Paul-Peter said the investigators found blood from both boys as well as Michelle. She also identified for the jury 2 pictures of Seth's body. And then she goes, Dreyer, Kehoe's attorney, questioned a few of the state's witnesses. She did clarify with Paul-Peter that a large amount of the blood at the scene came from Michelle Kehoe. If convicted, the charges she could face is life in prison, which we know she got life in prison. Now, this is from a story from KCRG.com, and this was on November the 2nd. The state's investigators won't reveal many details surrounding the death of the toddler and injuries suffered by his mother and brother in Littleton because police are still trying to piece together what happened. The Division of Criminal Investigation spokeswoman Jessa Lowen says details about the death of Sean Kehoe and injuries to his mother, Michelle, and brother are being kept private while investigators pursue a variety of options. Okay, so we know who was found where. Kehoe, 35, and her sons were reported missing by her husband and father, Gene Kehoe, on Sunday evening. He told police that they were traveling from their home from Colleyville to visit family in Sumner, but they never arrived. Officials say that around 8 a.m. Monday morning, an injured Michelle went to a nearby residence to get help. She said her sons were in danger. Okay, we know what happened to him. Let me see, the two boys. Let's see if there's, okay. Daniel Hart says that they are ruling nothing out. He said that no arrests have been made and no arrest warrants have been issued. Okay, this is before they figured out that she had done it herself. If you saw Michelle Kehoe or their family's white van Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, you are asked to call the Buchanan County Sheriff's Department. Uh-oh. Okay, this is before she told them that she had done this. Or they pieced together that she had actually done this. Okay. Police say Kehoe told them that her sons, Sean and Seth, distracted her, which caused her car to plunge. Uh-oh. This is when she's talking about the attempt when she went into the river. Hang on. State detectives are also investigating another incident involving Michelle Kehoe and her two sons. Iowa City police say that state investigators are looking into an incident reports from December of 2007. What is she doing every single month trying to do something to these children? This is horrible. In that accident, Michelle Kehoe and her two sons, Sean and Seth, plunged into the Iowa River by the Park Road Bridge. Police say that Kehoe told them her sons, Sean and Seth, distracted her, which caused her to plunge into the Iowa River by the Port Bridge. 4 passengers drove by the icy river to save her and the 2 boys. Given what has happened during the last 24 hours, police reviewed the accident report to determine if there was any reason to believe that crash wasn't just an accident. But police say after reviewing the report again, they don't have any reason to believe that it was not an accident. But see, she already said it was. All right, now let's talk about the appeal. Hang on a second. You see, it's almost like she just, again with this mess, I don't know why y'all gotta do. It's almost like she just every month was thinking of some way to take these kids' life. She just reminds me of Lori Vallow. She reminds me of a lot of these women that have taken their children's life. I mean, it's over and over, folks. Why? Well, let's look at her appeal over here. Thank you guys for being patient while we get through this. This was from July 13th of 2011. Now, this is the opinion delivered by Jay Doyle, one of the justices. Michelle Kehoe's appeals from her convictions first-degree murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment resulting in serious injury is affirmed. Of course, after hearing all of this, I would have had to affirm it as well. It just means they found there was nothing in the trial. There was no mistakes in the trial that they could reverse her conviction with, really. I mean, that's what appeal basically is. I mean, Michelle Kehoe appeals from her convictions for first degree and attempted murder, resulting in serious injury. She contends her trial counsel was ineffective in 3 respects. She first argues that the Iowa Code Section 701.4 from 2007, which defines the legal standard for insanity defense in Iowa, is unconstitutional, asserting violations of the due process and cruel and unusual punishment clauses of the state and federal constitutions. Because her trial counsel did not challenge the constitutionality of the Section 701.4, she asserts her trial counsel rendered ineffective assistance. Additionally, she argues her trial counsel was ineffective for failing to request a jury instruction on the consequences of a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. But she did not plead not guilty by reason of insanity, and for failing to object to the marshalling instructions on attempted murder as not including malice aforethought as an element. Upon review, we affirm. Okay, what did she think was going to happen here? I mean, in order to appeal, we got to think about this for a second. Let me take a look here. I believe you have to plead not guilty by reason of insanity in order for it to be okay. Insanity. Let me pull this up here. In order for this to be used, okay, in jury instructions. Let me take a look at this. Now, this is the state of Iowa, which could be very different from Texas, but we're going to find out. I'm not familiar with a lot of things in Iowa. Here we go. Let's take a look at what it says about that. Okay, not always. In many U.S. jurisdictions, a defendant generally must formally raise or plead an insanity defense for the jury to receive a not guilty by reason of insanity instruction. But the exact rule depends on the state and sometimes the federal law. For example, in states like Texas, insanity is considered an affirmative defense, meaning the defense must specifically raise it and present evidence before the judge will include it as an insanity instruction for the jury. In federal court, the insanity defense also must be affirmatively asserted under the federal insanity statute. Some states use different verdict language, such as guilty but mentally ill, instead of traditional insanity acquittals. Courts usually require a formal notice or plea of insanity, competent evidence supporting the defense, often psychiatric testimony, enough evidence that a reasonable jury could find insanity under the state's legal standard. In the defense, if the defense never raises insanity, the judge typically will not instruct the jury on the susponta, on the judge's own initiative. So that's why it was not in the jury instructions, because the defense never brought it up, right? There are rare appellate issues where mental illness evidences may still affect competency, diminished capacity arguments, or sentencing with ineffective counsel claims, even without an insanity plea, but that is separate from a true NGRI jury instruction. So that is why she did not win that appeal. And that is why there was no ineffective of counsel, because he could not, unless it was raised during the trial, it could not be part of the jury instructions. Okay, there you go. Okay, on October the 26th, we know that she drove her two children. We know what she did. Let me see. I'm going to see what happened in court here. Hang on. Dr. William Logan, MD, testified that he diagnosed Kehoe with major depressive disorders, and Dr. Logan opined Kehoe was able to understand she was killing herself and her children. However, he testified that Kehoe's thought process was so distorted by her mental illness that she was not rational. Dr. Marilyn Hutchinson's PhD also testified in support of Kehoe's defense of insanity. Dr. Hutchinson's opinion Kehoe both understood the nature and quality of her actions when she cut her children's throats, and that Kehoe formed a specific intent to kill her children. However, she opined that Kehoe did not understand cutting her children's throats was wrong, explaining that Kehoe, in her very, very irrational thinking, believed killing her children would save them from losing a parent or from a lifetime of depression, as well as guarantee them eternal life in heaven. Jesus Christ. Listen, I never really thought we would ever find anybody going with the same mental thought process as Lori Vallow, but here it is right here, Michelle Kehoe. She's going to save her children from a life of hell by killing them now. God Almighty. Okay, Lori, here's your new best friend right here. This is awful. Dr. Michael Taylor, MD, testified on behalf of the state. He agreed with Dr. Logan that Kehoe suffered from a major depressive disorder. Dr. Taylor further testified that his opinion on October 28, 2008, Kehoe was fully competent, fully capable of deliberating, premeditating, or forming a specific intent to kill. The opinion that on that day, Kehoe was also fully capable of understanding the nature and the quality of her acts, and she very clearly had the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. And see, I agree with him. At the close of evidence, instructions are submitted to the jury. Relevant here, the instruction concerning the elements of the sanity defense stated, if the state has proved all the elements of a crime, you should then determine if Kehoe has proved whether she was insane. In order for Kehoe to establish she was insane, she must prove by preponderance of the evidence either of the following. Number one, at the time of the crime was committed, Kehoe did not have sufficient mental capacity to know and understand the nature and quality of the acts that she's accused of. Or, number two, the time the crime was committed, Kehoe did not have the mental capacity to tell the difference between right and wrong as to the act she was accused of. If Kehoe has failed to prove either of the elements by the preponderance of the evidence, Kehoe is guilty. Kehoe's trial counsel did not object to the instructions set forth above, nor did he object to the marshalling instructions on attempted murder as not including malice aforethought as an element. Additionally, Kehoe's trial counsel did not request an instruction advising the jury of the consequences of a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. Okay. Now, the jury ultimately rejected Kehoe's asserted insanity defense and found her guilty as charged, and Kehoe has now appealed. Now, let's talk about this for a second. The discussion. Now, here's the discussion on her appeal. The challenge of constitutionality of Iowa Code Section 701.4 requests a jury instruction on the consequences of a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity, object the marshalling instructions on attempted murder as not including malice aforethought as an element. We review claims of ineffective assistance of counsel de novo, State versus Maxwell. Okay. Although we generally preserve such claims for post-conviction relief, where the record is sufficient to address the issues, we may resolve the claims on direct appeal. We find the record here is adequate to address the issues. In order to establish a claim for ineffective assistance of counsel, Kehoe must demonstrate her trial counsel, number one, failed to perform an essential duties, and number two, was prejudice was resulted, and number three, let me find number three over here. Okay. There's a lot of citings. They used a lot of different cases to cite in this appeal. If either element is not met, the claim will fail. There is a strong presumption of counsel's representation fell within the wide range of reasonable professional assistance, and Kehoe is not denied effective assistance by counsel, which she was not prejudiced, and this raises meritless issues. Let's see. Okay. It goes, the defendant must show that but for the counsel's unprofessional errors, the result of the proceedings would have been different, but we know that it would not have been different. We are now going to address her arguments on constitutionality of Code Section 701. The legal standard for an insanity defense in Iowa, codified at Iowa Code Section 701.4, provides a relevant parts. If the defense of insanity is raised, the defendant must prove by preponderance of the evidence the defendant at the time of the crime suffered from such a deranged condition of the mind as to render the defendant incapable of knowing the nature and quality of the act and the defendant was committing, or was incapable of distinguishing between right and wrong in relation to the act. Well, see, we already know because she was trying to hide what she did, she knew right from wrong. If you did not know right from wrong, why would you try to hide it? That's the example I'm going to use. So Iowa Code 701.4, the language of Section 701.4 is a codification of the rule articulated, and it talks about a bunch of different cases that they've cited here, which I'm not going to read all those cases. Okay, so it has been adopted in many other jurisdictions as the legal standard where insanity is alleged as a defense. Okay. The Iowa Supreme Court first adopted, and here's all the different, I'm not going to read all of those, we'd be here all day. Okay. It's, nor are we concerned, alternatives, blah, blah, blah. Section 701.4 was later challenged in State versus Craney. Okay. In Craney, the defendant asserted the trial court erred in failing to give a separate instruction on the irresistible impulse as a defense in addition to the jury instruction setting forth in Section 701.4, and that's the statutory definition of insanity. The court found no error. Yeah, there was no error. In adopting the McNaughton test without any other alternatives and refinements which exist in this area of law, generally an assembly laid down the rule which is to be applied as test of insanity in a criminal prosecution. The court reasoned that the entire defense of insanity is thus subsumed under the McNaughton test embodied in Section 701.4, including any alleged irresistible impulses on the part of the defendant, and it declined to alter the rule. That's right. The constitutionality of Section 701.4 was specifically challenged, and there's a bunch of times that this has been challenged. I'm not going to read every single one of those, but I mean, it's over and over they've challenged this. The due process guaranteed in Article 1, Section 9 of the Iowa Constitution is identical to that of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Normally, we interpreted provisions in our Constitution which are similar to those in the federal Constitution as being identical in scope, important in purpose. In the State versus Boland, there's some more, we applied this time-honored principle to due process clauses of the federal and Iowa constitutions. Of course, no rule requires us to apply the principles which accords our constitutional provisions the same interpretation which has been rendered to the companion provisions in the federal constitution. It urges us to give Iowa's due process clause an interpretation diametrically opposes to the existing interpretation of the federal clause. But to do so would contradict more than just the federal authorities. It would also contradict the clear majority of conclusions of the state appellate courts in interpreting the state constitutions. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go find the next thing that's important here. Okay, let's see what else. Due process claim. Let's go on down to that. Here, Kehoe first argues our legislators' adoption of McNaughton rule it is a violation of due process in the Iowa Constitution because our standard does not include a volatile prong, unlike the American Law Institute, or ALI, in the penal code standards for determining insanity. Okay, now let's see. Let's talk about this. On appeal, okay, that's a bunch of different appeals right there. Here we go. Let me get down to something that we can actually. Upon our review, we do not find Section 701.4 is plainly and without doubt repugnant to the requirements of due process. The Iowa Supreme Court and numerous other courts have found McNaughton tests to meet the constitutional guarantees. We find no persuasive reasons to depart from the United States Supreme Court's analysis in Clark, and therefore we decline to interpret that the Iowa constitutional guarantee of due process to afford more protection than the federal constitution with respect to the appropriate definition of sanity. Okay? We therefore reach the same conclusions in interpreting our constitution as that reached by the court in Clark in interpreting the due process clauses of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. You'll see Clark, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to read all that. There was no cruel and unusual punishment clauses. Kehoe also contends that our legislature adoption of McNaughton rule is a violation of the cruel and unusual punishment clauses, citing both the federal and Iowa constitutions. Our contention is premised on the belief that unconstitutional to criminality punish a person who, with the traditional McNaughton test for determining sanity, cannot control his or her behavior. We find this argument to be unpersuasive. She could control her behavior, absolutely. So we're getting on down to consequences of not guilty by verdict of reason of insanity. This was the jury instruction complaint. Kehoe next contends her trial counsel was ineffective for failing to request a jury instruction informing the jury of the consequences of a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. Kehoe acknowledges that the Iowa cases have held such an instruction is generally inappropriate, unnecessary. See State versus Appellate. So why would she bring this into the appeal if it was unnecessary and inappropriate? It did not fit, right? Our next one was failing to object to the attempted murder jury instructions. Why would you? Boy, the Iowa Code Section 07.1 states relevant parts. A person commits a Class B felony when the intent to cause the death of another person and not under circumstances which would justify the person's actions. The person does not act by which the person expects to set in motion force or chain of events which will cause or result in the death of other persons. Although Section 707.11 is entitled in the code attempts to commit murder, that this express terms of the statutes indicates it does not contain malice, aforethought elements. Okay, so she could not use that either. The state must prove all of the following elements, of which they did. They proved that on October the 26th, Kehoe cut with the knife. By her act, she expected to set in motion a force or chain of events would have caused or resulted in death, and that Kehoe acted that specifically intended to cause the death. If the state has proved all the elements, Kehoe is guilty of attempt to commit murder. If the state has failed to prove any of the elements, Kehoe is not guilty of attempted murder. It's just that simple, and she was found guilty. So no malice or aforethought element was included, and Kehoe's trial counsel did not object to the elements of absence. On appeal, Kehoe asserts that because the code has identified the crime stated as 707.11, attempted to commit murder, and murder is defined in the code occurring when a person kills another person with malice, aforethought, either express or implied commits murder. Her attorney was ineffective for not objecting to the marshalling instructions that did not include a malice, aforethought element. See Iowa Code 707.11. They disagreed. In 1976, the legislature enacted a complete revision of the substantive criminal laws. In 1976 Iowa Acts Chapter 1245, the legislature created a new section entitled Attempts to Commit Homicide, which replaces assault with intent to commit murder. And it goes, see Section 711, State versus Braggs. Okay, this is the case that was used in Iowa 2010. However, when the 1979 Iowa Code was printed, the code editor retained the wording murder in the title of the section rather than homicide, as stated by the Legislative Act. As the Iowa Supreme Court has explained, a head note is not part of the statutory law of the state, and its inclusion in the information of the state cases adds nothing to the information. State versus Chenoweth. Anyway, here's a bunch of times they've used it. Malice aforethought is not required element under the express language statute. Because malice aforethought is not an element of the crime of attempt to commit murder, we find Kehoe's trial counsel had no duty to object to the instruction. So in conclusion, for the foregoing reasons, we affirm Kehoe's convictions for first-degree murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment and resulting in serious injuries, and that's affirmed. So that was her very first appeal. Now, here's the thing about this. She appealed that case. Wow. Well, I'm from, oh, really, Cinderella? I didn't know that. I haven't heard of this. I don't watch much. Oh, yeah, I understand, Cinderella. This is a strange case. Now, so she appeals it a couple more times in 2018 and then again in 2022, I believe it was. But you know what? It's always the same result. They deny it. She's it's all been affirmed and she cannot appeal it again. So she will stay exactly where she's at. It was not postpartum. Let me get rid of this over here. Hang on, guys. Whoops. There. Okay, is that going to get rid of that? Okay, there she is. All right. It was not postpartum. She basically premeditated and took the lives of her children. Period. By end. She sounds like all the other ones who went out and bought this, that, and the other to prepare for what they were going to do, and then she followed through. So I don't know, this case is just another disgusting case of a mother who decided, see, they think they're going to get, the weird thing about it is these people think they're going to get away with it, which is like Gypsy Rose Blanchard. It's the same thing. Well, what do you mean I'm going to be held? What do you mean I'm going to be held responsible for this? Don't you realize there's something wrong over here? Don't you realize I'm depressed? Don't you realize that I have postpartum? I mean, come on, people. When you premeditate something, it's not like you just snap. There's a difference between a psychosis, a snap decision, and premeditated, which is exactly what this is. So like I said a while ago, we talked about the different cases where actually postpartum has been used successfully, and it is so rare, so rare. So let me pull this back up over here. Postpartum depression. Hang on a second. Hang on. Let me get this pulled back up. I don't want to pull it back up. I'm going to use my phone to pull it back up instead of the computer because I don't want to have to open this up again. But I mean, it has been raised in criminal cases involving harm to children, but legally it's not automatically excused for killing. Courts treat it as a mental health condition that may or may not affect criminal responsibility depending on the severity and the evidence presented. There are important distinctions. Of course, we talked about those, the difference between PPD and PPB. In a criminal court, defense attorneys may argue the mother could not understand right from wrong because of severe mental illness. But you know right from wrong if you were over there hiding what you've done. I think we've seen this over and over in a bunch of different cases. Prosecutors often argue that the defendant still knew what they were doing, planned the act, hid the evidence, fled, lied, or otherwise showed consciousness of guilt. Of course she did. The jury decides whether mental illness meets the legal insanity standard in that state. So the cases that this has been involved in was Andrea Yates, that she had severe postpartum psychosis, became central to the insanity defense after she drowned her children in Texas. That is the only one that's been overturned. See, she was overturned and now she's in the mental hospital. We know Lindsay Clancy is exactly going to use that defense. We talked about that a while ago. And that we know Michelle Kehoe attempted to use it, but it did not work for her. So this diagnosis alone does not cause an acquittal. It will not. The legal question is usually whether the mental condition was severe enough to satisfy the jurisdiction's insanity standard at the time of the crime. And the answer is usually no. Now, we know that Kehoe will never get paroled. She will be in prison for the rest of her life, which is where she belongs. And I feel like the judge made the right decision with the no contact order, because that's the last thing that that little boy needs to have to deal with, is being forced to go see his mother in prison after she attempted to kill him, after he watched and heard her kill his little brother. Hell no. No, it's just wrong. Just wrong. Yeah. Yeah, Darlie Routier, the same thing. You know what? Here's the question about Darlie Routier. Let's look at something right quick. Let's pull her up real quick. It's okay if we can go off on a side note. It's okay. Darlie Routier. Where is she? Let's see. Hang on a minute. I wonder if there's a is there a, let's see. Let me see if there's a no contact order on her as well. There should be. There should be on any child that was any child whose mother tried to kill them. There should be a no contact order forever. Let's see. Yeah, there is no public record of a no contact order involving Darlie Routier. Now, she does remain on death row. Death row visitation Texas is generally non-contact, meaning they visit behind glass, right? Prison visitation court order, no contact. Okay. There does not appear to be a widely reported public order specifically labeled no contact order in her case that's currently available. So yeah. So in her case, there's just not one. But I just don't understand. I really don't. Let's look at some legal clarity. Hang on a second, guys. Let me pull this up. I'll look at Darlie Routier's conviction. The evidence her supporters dispute, and where her legal fight stands after nearly 3 decades on Texas death row. This is from April 1st of 2026. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Darlie Routier remains on death row at the Patrick L. O'Daniel unit in Texas, where she has been incarcerated since February of 1997 for capital murder convictions. She is one of the 6 women currently on Texas death row and has spent nearly 3 decades there with no execution date ever set. Why? Why do they give men execution dates, but they don't give women execution dates? That's something I'll never understand. I mean, Cinderella, does that make any sense to you? No. I mean, if you're on death row, you're on death row. It shouldn't matter what your sex is. Her case continues to generate intense public debate because of unresolved questions about DNA evidence and disputed forensic interpretations that her legal team argues point to an unknown intruder. Right. See? No, absolutely not. Now, here's the thing we do know about her. Hang on, to get rid of that. We do know that there was an order filed to retest some DNA. I believe I talked about this not too long ago. I don't remember which live it was. Anyway, in the early morning hours of June 6, 1996, police responded to a frantic 911 call from the Routier home in Raleigh, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. Inside the downstairs family room, officers found 6-year-old Devin Routier and 5-year-old Damon Routier dying from multiple stab wounds. Both boys were pronounced dead. Darlie Routier herself had wounds including slashes across her neck and cuts on her arms, which she said were inflicted by an intruder who attacked the family while they slept downstairs. See, I've always had questions about this, and we know she's guilty. I feel like she's guilty. Who would break into their house, steal nothing, and just slash some kids? Please explain that to me. Does that make any sense at all? No. Police noted that a window screen in the garage had been cut, and a bread knife from the kitchen was found outside the home. So you're telling me the person had stole the bread knife before, and they were outside cutting the screen to come inside with the knife they stole before. See how this makes sense? The evidence does not track. There's no way. Oh, let me guess. The intruder was somebody they had met before, and she didn't even notice that she had a bread knife missing from her kitchen. God, this is crazy. Anyway, a bloody sock containing blood from both boys was recovered in the alley several houses away. Routier told investigators that she woke to Damon pressing her and saying, "Mommy, Mommy." I saw a man walking away through the kitchen and chased him briefly before realizing how badly injured her sons were. Are you saying she chased him down the street? Is that what you're telling us? Investigators grew skeptical of her account within days, focusing on what they considered inconsistencies in her description and the physical evidence at the scene. The trial and the conviction. Due to extensive media coverage in the Dallas area, the trial was moved to Kerrville in Kerr County in a change of venue. Prosecutors charged Routier with capital murder specifically for Damien's death, keeping the potential for a separate charge on Devin's killing as a legal reserve. The prosecutor's theory was that Routier stabbed both boys, inflicted superficial wounds on herself, and then staged the scene to look like a break-in. They pointed to the family's financial difficulties as a possible motive. One piece of evidence that left lasting impressions on the jury was a video recorded about 8 days after the murders of what would have been the birthday. Okay, now let's talk about that birthday party for a minute. I'm not going to say much about that birthday party. I'm not, because I want to tell you a little. I'm going to give you a little information about what happened to me. My child was buried it was a couple of days before his birthday. And yes, I did go down there on his birthday. He and his brother and I, we went on his birthday. We just visited with him on his birthday. So I can see a family going back to a funeral, going back to the cemetery and visiting with the children on their birthday. Okay, that I don't understand the silly string and all that, but I do understand going back to the grave and visiting them on their birthday. I get that. I mean, till this day, it's been 13 years, but we still go. We still go anyway. I mean, so I'm not going to fault her for going back to the cemetery. I'm not going to use that against her, is what I'm going to say. But the evidence has never made sense in this case. This footage showed Routier spraying silly string on the boys' graves and appearing to laugh. Prosecutors used this video to argue she showed no genuine grief. The defense countered that the tape was selectively edited and did not show Routier sobbing before and after the brief celebration, but that the damage to her credibility with the jury was significant. Now, there was a bloodstain pattern analysis as well. Also played a central role as prosecution experts testified the blood evidence on Routier's nightshirt and the scene was consistent with stabbings being staged rather than the result of an intruder attack. The defense challenged the interpretation but struggles to overcome them at trial. In February of 1997, the jury convicts Routier of capital murder and sentences her to death. Now, the disputed evidence, we're going to talk about that for a second. Several pieces of physical evidence remain at the center of the debate over Routier's guilt. Her defense team and supporters have consistently pointed to these as indicators that someone else committed these murders. Number one, this bloody sock. A tube sock containing blood from both Devin and Damien were found in an alley about 75 yards from Routier's home. The defense argues no reasonable scenario explains how Routier could have planted that sock that far away during the brief window between the attacks and the 911 call, especially given her own injuries. The prosecution maintains that she placed it there to simulate an intruder having an escape route. Right. Hey, couponing. Yeah. First you've ever heard that one too? Yeah. Unidentified fingerprints. This is an interesting case, and it is, but I do believe that she did this, and I do believe it's because they had financial difficulties, but I'm not going to use the birthday party against her. A bloody fingerprint was found on a coffee table in the room where the boys were killed. Uh-oh, let me change my earbuds. My earbuds fixing to go out. Here we go. Make sure y'all can hear me. Can you hear me okay? Can y'all still hear me? Because I had to change my earbud out. All right. Oh, I guess you can. All right. Now, there was a bloody fingerprint that has never matched anyone in the household or any known individual. Well, how do we know that somebody who was investigating in this case didn't touch something? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. How do we know somebody didn't touch something? Because when you have a murder scene like that, and especially when you've got ambulances there and there's a lot of people in that house. Not everybody remembers to wear gloves. Remember? We've seen crime scenes totally messed up from people not following the rules they should have followed in a crime scene. And so therefore the evidence was not usable. And I think in this case, there could have been somebody there who did not put a glove on. All right. Let's see. A Dallas County judge ordered the print to run through the FBI's automated fingerprint identification system, but no match was obtained. Routier's attorneys have complained that the defense team was not allowed to observe that process. Well, why should you allow to observe that process? I mean, it's put in there and it's run through the system. There's either a match there or there's not a match there, period. Routier's neck wound. Surgeons who treated Routier testified that the slash across her throat came within 2 millimeters of her carotid artery. The defense argues this wound was far too dangerous to be self-inflicted, while the prosecution maintained it was a calculated injury designed to bolster the intruder story. I personally could never slash my own throat or anybody else. All right? I could never do that. Hang on a second. Let me plug this phone in so it doesn't die on us. All right, here we go. I can never do that. So, this evidentiary dispute has fueled an ongoing legal challenge and public interest in this case for nearly 3 decades. How the capital appeals process works in Texas, we kind of know, but we'll talk about it. Texas death penalty cases follow a multi-stage of appeals path that can stretch over many years. Yeah. What is that, Cinderella? Let me see. No? Okay. So, understanding this process helps explain Routier's case has been in the courts for so long without reaching a final resolution. Well, she's lost appeal. So what do you mean there's no final resolution? When you lose your appeal, that means that it's your conviction has been affirmed. That's it. So there's a direct appeal. So every death sentence gets a direct appeal. We know that. Then there's the state habeas corpus, which is after the direct appeal, the inmate can file a state habeas corpus. Unlike the direct appeal, this proceeding allows the court to consider evidence outside the original trial record. Claims of ineffective legal representation and newly discovered evidence or prosecutorial misconduct are common grounds. Texas law sets specific procedures for capital habeas corpuses, including deadlines and requirements for raising claims. Now, then there's the federal habeas corpus. See, there's so many different appeals. That's why it takes so long. But I don't understand after 30 years why she's still here. Now, I don't know if Texas has ever put any female to death. That's another. Let's look that up. Hang on just a second, guys. I'm going to pull it up right over here. Hang on. Has Texas ever put a woman to death? Let's see. Texas ever. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. What are you doing here? Go back over here. Hang on. Let's see if that ever happened. Go back over here. Oh, let's see. Let's go back. Come on. That's Texas. Okay. I believe they have that. Capital. Okay. Whoops. Put that C there and you got to spell it right. Okay. Let's see. Has Texas put a woman? Oh, wait a minute. Yes, Texas has put women to death for capital murder, although it's relatively rare since capital punishment was resumed in the United States in the 1970s. Here are the women that's been executed. There's only been 6 women executed in the state of Texas since the 1970s. Lisa Ann Coleman was September of 2014. Kimberly LaGale McCarthy was June of 2013. Frances Elaine Newton was September of 2005. Betty Lou Beats was February of 2000. Darlie Routier, here we go, we're back to Darlie. Darlie Routier has been reprieved of her sentence and her sentence remains under review. Then there's Carla Faye Tucker, who was put to death February the 3rd of 1998. So out of the women on death row, it seems as only Darlie Routier is the one, Darlie Routier is the one still hanging on out here, right? This is just wrong. I think she needs to be, I understand why they do it, because they have to make sure every possible, that everything they could have done to save somebody, to prove that they were innocent, has been done. And a lot of times that requires further evidence of any DNA that was found that was never tested. Now that's where it becomes a big problem, because they do not like to send DNA for testing. It's hard to get the trial court to agree to test DNA that was not tested back in whenever these cases first happened. So I don't know what's going to happen with Darlie Routier, but it's hard for me to believe it's been 30 years and she's still here. Most men don't last on death row for 30 years. Now, do they? Think about that for a second. Wow. Let me get back. Okay, let's go back to where we were about Darlie Routier. Here we go. Okay. Hang on a minute. Oh boy. Hope you're all having a good day today. Hang on a second. All right, I'm gonna pull her back up. Her name's hard to spell. Darlie. Okay. She's 56 years old. Her name is Darlie Lynn Peck Routier. Let's see. Where else were we? Okay. No, they're not. She's still not married. Let's see. You know what though? I've heard that there are a lot of men who write to Darlie Routier. She has a lot of boyfriends. She has a lot of people ask her to marry her and all that. What is it with people going after people in prison? I don't understand it. Now let's go back to the Court of Appeals on Darlie. Where is she at? Okay. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to read that. We're gonna have to pull it up a different way. It's too hard to read that way. All right. Let's see, where were we? Did she really murder her two sons? Now, here's something, well, that's 7 months ago. I don't want to use that one. Okay, yeah. There's been 2020, I mean, there's all kinds of shows on Darlie Routier. I mean, there's something called The Last Defense, which is a documentary about Darlie Routier. And it's on Amazon Prime. Now that might be, I mean, I'm not going to show these because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but there's a lot of different movies. Let's pull up all the movies about Darlie Routier. Okay. So y'all can go check her out. Movies on Darlie. Okay. Oops. There's no major Hollywood feature films, but there are, okay, here's the documentary series. In 2018, there was a documentary series. It's a 4-part documentary series called The Last Defense. Then there's one from 2013 that says On Death Row, Darlie Routier's story. There's another one in 2020, Death Row's Women with Suzanne Reed. There's another one that's called Waiting for a Miracle. It's just an independent documentary detailing the case of Darlie. Then there's 2020, The Last Defense from 2019, where they aired a special 2-hour episode exploring the new testing and unexamined evidence of this case. Let me go to Reddit because that's talked about in Reddit. Here we go. Hang on, guys. This is fun. It's fun to talk about these. Okay. Has anybody seen this episode? It's Collection 3, Episode 4 on Netflix if you're interested. And it's called the Darlie Routier Forensic Files episode. He says, I finished watching it now, and I'm just curious to know what everyone thinks about this episode, specifically the evidence they used to suggest guilt. I guess I would say that I see Forensic Files as more reliable source than any other crime show on Oxygen. Just talking about TV shows? Wow. I was surprised that the bread knife in the kitchen. Okay. I was surprised that the bread knife in the kitchen knife block had fiberglass residue on it that matched the fly wire screen. Okay, you know why? Because she took the knife out of her own kitchen and slashed the screen. That's why. How did somebody take a knife? Okay, because it was slashed from the outside in instead of the inside out. That's how they supposedly broke into the house, because the screen was slashed and they went in through the window. Now she did all that as she was doing the murders. Because how would this person have gotten a knife out of her house and slashed the screen from the outside in at another time? Is that what you're telling us? You would have noticed the knife. That's what I'm saying. You would have noticed that knife missing. The weirdest thing to me was that the investigators recalled speaking with Darren when they arrived at the scene, and he was saying things along the lines of, did you see my wife? She's beautiful, isn't she? She's got nice big breasts and other things like that, and suggesting that the intruder broke into the house to assault Darlie. Now, see, it's ridiculous. Jack, what are you doing? Come on, Jack. Come over here. My dog's looking at me like, Mama, let me out of here. Come on. Come here, Jack. There you go. I'm going to let him out the door. Anyway, I mean, to me, I think what happened in this case is I think that they had a lot of financial problems, and I knew that they had some kind of insurance on these children, and I think that she thought she was going to get. Come on, let's go. I think that she thought she was going to get away with this, and they were going to collect the insurance money, and that was going to be the end of it. That's what I think happened in this case. Let me get my little dog out of here. Come on, there you go. Let's go. Hang on. All right. That's what I think happened. So anyway, yeah, I think that's what happened. I don't know though. But you know what? Let me make sure I'm giving the correct facts. Did they have insurance? Okay. On Devin and Damon Routier. Hang on a minute. Let me make sure I'm right about this. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay. I'm going down. There's so many stories on here. It's hard. I got to find it. I didn't kill my baby, she said. Yes, she did. Sits on death row, Texas Judiciary, Court of Criminal Appeals. Let's see what this one is. I wish I could read this, but it's so small I can't. Okay, hang on a second. Let's pull something up over here. Let's go ahead and get off the news tab here. All right. I'm going to show you something. Hang on. We're going to go over here to YouTube, and I'm going to show you something about Darlie. The thing about Michelle Kehoe is she'll never get out. Nothing will ever change for her. She is where she's going to be for the rest of her life, and she deserves to be there. I don't know. Does mental health mean that you should stay in prison forever? See, that's another thing. I don't know. Let's see. Hang on, guys. Let's pull this up. Okay, this is going to be from 5 years ago, and this is the behavior panel. Hang on a second. Oops. Okay. Now let me share the screen, and we're going to give credit to the behavior panel. But I think it's interesting their take on it, because that's who I'm going to believe is the behavior panel. So here we go. So let's give credit to the behavior panel before we go on. All right, there we go. And let's fix this over here. Okay. Now, I'm going to put my little screen over this so we don't get in trouble for any copyright.
Oh my God.
Y'all, hang on.
I need help.
But you just say you don't remember.
But I don't remember.
She does.
Please consider subscribing. Our little YouTube algorithm thing that sits on our dashboard says there's a 62% chance that if you're watching this, you're not one of our subscribers and one of our panelists. So please consider doing so. I swear to you, it's not going to be painful.
I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement and the military in interrogation and body language. And I created the #1 online course, Body Language Tactics, with Greg Hartley. Mark?
I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language. I help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they speak, including some of the leaders of the G7. Yeah. Chase.
I'm Chase Hughes. I did 20 years in the U.S. military, wrote the #1 best-selling book on behavior profiling and influence. Nowadays, I train the general public, and I still train real-life Jason Bournes. Greg?
Greg Hartley. I'm a former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor. I've written 10 books on body language and behavior and put together the #1 body language course, bodylanguagetactics.com with Scott. I spend most of my time on Wall Street and in corporate America.
Okay. All right. We're going to stop for just a second for fair use because, we have to do that. Now, this is why I trust these people. I trust exactly what they're going to tell us and what they think about Darlie, and is she guilty or not guilty. I'm going to speed it up a little bit because we've already been on here for 1 hour and 46 minutes, so y'all hang on. Just bear with me a minute. Just for a little bit, we're going to talk about her. Hang on. Here we go. All right. Speed it up. Oh, boy. Going to go to 1.25. All right, now.
Today we're going to talk about Darlie Routier. She's in prison for killing her children. And the panelists have spoken again. We get a whole bunch of requests for this one.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
All right. Anybody want to add anything?
She's on death row, indeterminate date, but to die by lethal injection in Texas.
Cool. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Her neck wound is still visible, yet she has no memory of the attack. At trial, even Darlie conceded it would be hard to sleep through it.
I know I didn't sleep through that. I mean, how can anybody sleep through something like that?
But yet you say you don't remember.
But I don't remember. Can you imagine waking up out of your sleep with a man attacking you?
Well, what do you think happened then if you can't remember, but you don't think you slept through it?
I think that I tried to fight with a man, and I think that he either knocked me unconscious, or I think that when, he slit my throat or whatever, I think I passed out.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
I think it's interesting that she says, I don't think I was asleep. And then can you imagine waking up from your sleep, being attacked by a man? So we'll continuously see this theme repeated out, which I like to call.
See, I agree with him. The thing is, she tells it herself. She's talking. She's telling on herself as we go. And we have to stop every once in a while for fair use, and I'm going to do that because I do not want to get a copyright strike. But I trust these people completely 100%. I'm going to ask you, if you come in or out, please hit that thumbs up so we can get our work into the algorithm. Appreciate you coming to see us today. Thank you so much. Here we go.
Well, the vanishing perpetrator.
Yes.
Not important to her. And she says, why would anybody sleep through that? So we're going to see a theme here starting now where you're going to see her socialize an issue. Instead of discuss her own issues, she'll socialize it around. How would other people do this? How would someone else do that? And I think there's some feigned innocence and regression in her voice, which is a little bit common in the South. But you can see a change when she's trying to appear innocent. You actually see a little grief muscle up here in her forehead. And I want you to take a look, see whether or not it's symmetrical or asymmetrical, and I'll wrap it up at the end.
And you know what, South Marks, we started out talking about Michelle Kehoe, and her wounds were superficial as well. And she tried to blame that somebody attacked her and her children, that she tried to kill herself as well. That's how we got started on these cases. We started out with one case, and now we moved to something else. But anyway, here we go. Thank you.
Because there's a great illustration there towards the end. And she says, "Amen." And she's unable to broadcast any emotion with this. This is just relying on illustrations here. And as she's answering, her eyes move, and I'm going to read this out here. Her eyes go from 7, these are o'clock positions, 7 to 2 to 12 to 10 to 9 to 2 to 5 during this one answer. And in this moment of brief silence, you can see tiny eye movement. So I want you to watch in this little pause, when this video plays again, watch these little jerky eye movements. And this is what's called a transderivational search in psychology, when somebody is recruiting all the little file clerks to go back and search all the file cabinets possible to get the best answer to the question that's coming out. And I think she says, when he slit my throat or whatever. So there's two distancing things here.
Yeah.
And we see a little bit of Mark Bowden's famous lemon drop, which let's all just call it the lemon drop from now on. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pick up on that one, because you're right. Sour taste on slit my throat. So, interesting. What does that tell us? Well, I don't know what it tells us, but certainly I would want to ask a little more around that, get a little bit more detail around that, because, that sour taste happens around there. Is it sourness at her own story around that? Is it sourness about the event? You could be pretty sour about having your throat slit. So, not sure about that, but it is very, very notable. She moves in this whole piece, for me, from certainty to uncertainty and confusion to confrontation, and then the idea of possibility. That's quite a move through quite a small idea. So I just get a little bit worried that there isn't one theme to this. Simple question, but it goes through a number of themes: certainty, uncertainty and confusion, confrontation, possibility, and a very low blink rate on this, given the nature of the story being talked about there. I might expect just a little bit more action in the blink rate around that. So certainly as a first video for me, it kind of raises some, I guess, little flags around, what's going on here? This is a little bit different, a little bit odd. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Well, I'll start off with 3 of the big things that little red flags for me. She does that eye lock when she's answering, which a lot of people do, but not like that. That's similar to what Greg and I call the romancer, where she's like all locked in and up in her face and trying to move forward and get closer to her. Even though she's got her hand up as a barrier on the table, she still moves.
See, but I think that she's used sexuality the whole time to try to persuade people her way. And some of that for me is based on what her husband said as soon as the police officers got there about, oh, did you see my wife? Blah, blah, blah. That was so disgusting on his part. Anyway, we'll keep going.
Forward. And her voice goes high on I know. When she says no, it goes real high. That could be, it couldn't be, or, couldn't denote or indicate deception, but quite often it does. I'm not going to give that 100% on that. And then we have fading facts as she goes along, it gets quieter and quieter, which is something that happens quite often when someone's not telling the truth or they're being deceptive. And when she says, but I don't remember, that's when Chase, earlier we were talking with Greg about the culturally in the South, how you'll hear some women have a high childlike voice. In the old days anyway, that was very popular. And in this case, I think she's actually, like you said, Chase, she's regressing here. And I think I think to a large degree, because it's almost childlike. It's 7 or 8 year old tone and deliver on that. The vernacular, or not, maybe not the vernacular, but the way but her delivery, it sure sounds like a little kid. And when the interviewer pauses, that's when she adds her qualifier. When she says, what did she say? That's when she says, but I don't remember. Yeah. Then when she asks her what she thinks happened, she says, think 4 times. You don't say, I think this happened, then I think this happened, then I think it's one event. I think this happened, which means she's gone back and thought about it, and she's in defense mode of that. She's not just letting it flow. She's not loping. Everything stops on think. When she says, I think this happened, I think that happened, where it should be, I think what happened was this. Somebody came in and this. You don't have to keep saying, I think, for every event that you've created there, if it actually happened. So that to me suggests he's focused on the defense of it as she goes through that. Greg, what do you got?
So for me, I always say successful organisms do what made them successful. This is not accidental. This childlike regression, in my opinion, from watching her, is not something specific to this. It's the ploy. It's the process that made her successful, whatever successful meant in her life. It's who she is. She's got all these tools at her disposal. It's whatever makes her feel like she can argue or answer questions. I've seen this personality type. I've dealt with a lot of this kind of behavior. I would say feelers, not thinkers. She's going to throw feelings out there and a lot of gushy, hey, this is how, and that's how. You can't discuss feelings. Feelings are not tangible things. So they may mean something different to every person. They're usually really good at putting the shoe back on your foot. So it's not about them. It's can you imagine? It's not about how I felt. It's back to you. It's putting you back in the story. So that's circular logic. And if you've ever argued with someone in circular logic, it feels like you're an idiot when you're finished because they just keep looping back to the same thing, handing it back to you in a different flavor. And I think we'll see more of this as we go. And if you were interrogating her, you'd see a lot of it. When she says, can you imagine? She does a slight smile, if you notice that. Can you imagine? A little bit of a smile. Nothing to smile about. Then sorrow, a little grief in her forehead. And then that kind of plaintive, I don't know. I don't remember. That all that together is a technique. All that together, I'll bet if you deal with her a lot, you would see it. When I was a kid, the old Southern women would say, sugar won't melt in that girl's mouth. And that meant that they were doing something. They were working some kind of a ploy. And there's...
Okay, for fair use, and we have stuff to West. See, I agree with him because what he's talking about is, well, that little girl thing. Well, everybody's going to believe her that little girl, aren't they? They're not going to believe that she could do anything like that. Look at that sweet little girl. I mean, this is classic, and she reminds me of Letitia Stouch as well. Here we go.
Knowledge and wisdom and old sayings that old people have. It's been there a long time for a reason. Now that old South is dead, but that kind of stuff still lives on. She goes into creative very early, and Chase, you're dead on about her eye access. And you think about people going to one place where they remember, another place where they create. She goes off to a specific place when she starts to talk about this whole thing about what happened. She does a request for approval, brow up, when she's talking about, then he slit my throat or whatever. Well, hold on a minute. In my life, I've had a bunch of things that qualifies whatever. Your throat being slit's not a whatever. He slit my throat, period. That would be an emphatic. That's an odd thing to do. And then she turns to that romancer and starts to lock eye contact. I think if you push her hard, if I were interrogating her, I would suck up to her real good, make her think, well, you're pretty and smart. Aren't you just brilliant? And then as soon as I got her to believe I believe that, I would start pinging her and poking her and watch that facade dry up, watch her come out. And we'll see some of that as this goes on. This is a good intro. I don't see anybody that I think is innocent or terrified. I see quite the opposite here. Yeah. Successful organism being successful. That's it.
Her neck wound is still visible, yet she has no memory of the attack. At trial, even Darlie conceded it would be hard to sleep through it.
I know I didn't sleep through that. I mean, how would anybody sleep through something like that?
But yet you say you don't remember.
But I don't remember. Can you imagine waking up out of your sleep with a man attacking you?
Well, what do you think happened then if you can't remember, but you
But
don't
wait
get
a
to sleep
minute.
through it?
I think that
Wait a minute. You're going to tell me that you're downstairs with your children. I mean, it's quite often, you know, our young children, we'd sleep with them or lay in their bed with them until they went to sleep or whatever, you know, and the husband go to bed by, we know that. But you're going to tell me that it was such a quiet attack. You didn't scream or nothing, and your husband never got woke up? Come on, man. See, complete lies.
tried to fight with a man, and I think that he either knocked me unconscious, or I think that when, you know, he slit my throat or whatever, I think I
or whatever
passed out.
Right.
The prosecution made much of Darlie's inappropriate behavior. For instance, the first policeman on the scene testified Darlie didn't seem concerned about Damon.
He's got his eyes open, and he's trying to breathe.
That's sad. Trigger warning, trigger warning.
I told her that she needed to help him, but she just wouldn't help him.
That's a lie. There's no other words to use. That's a lie.
She says she comforted Damon.
I told him to hold on. I told him to be strong. And he said, okay, Mommy. He shook his head.
You know what, South Marks? Yeah, the old South is not dead. Hell, I'm from Texas. You can tell completely from my voice. Let's keep going here.
That was the last words I ever heard him say.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so look, there's a lot of good stuff going for her here. You know, that's a lie, that's a lie. That's pretty clear. Says it twice, okay? Pretty emphatic, so I like that. Grief comes, and there's some strong muscles here as well. So, and some curving in the eyebrows, which is difficult to do off your own bat. It usually does happen with a real
South
emotion.
Carolina.
She gets reddening in the cheeks, the nose, the eyes, the lips. Again, hard to do on purpose, hard to put on. So all the right muscles in all the right places. And a very emphatic idea of somebody else is lying, and that would go really well for her until she clocks the camera. And by clocking the camera, I mean looks right down the lens. Now, and look, it's easy to do. It's easy to do when you're on a film set, you're on a TV set. It's easy because often there's a lens cover and it reflects light, and it's very easy for just some light to shine in the lens, and your eyes just go over there and go, what's happening there? Interesting thing about the lens covers as well is you can often see your own reflection in there, and you can see how you're doing, you know. And if you just look off camera and just catch yourself, you can go, oh great, I'm in shot at the moment, this is a really nice shot of me. The unfortunate thing about this is either it is a narcissistic compulsion that during this emotion to go, hey, how am I looking, am I doing pretty well, you're getting this is a good shot of me, isn't this is going.
See, I believe, and I'm not, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm nothing. I'm just a mom over here who worked in the legal world for many years, etc. And I like to talk about these things, but I believe that she, just like the rest of these people, are sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissistic personalities, and they just see themselves as better than anybody else. And so she's looking at herself, the reflection of herself, look at me, look at me. And here's the thing about it. See, I wonder how they do with people that have Botox and their forehead doesn't move at all. I wonder how that works with Mark and the rest of them. Here we go.
Well, do you get that emotion? Are you getting it? Is it good? So it's either that or an accident. Okay, so it's either that or an accident, because the emotion is pretty good and a tough one to fake. It's pretty good, but that is a bit of a problem. That look down the camera, it's a little bit too long, feels a little bit too knowing. We can't make any decision on that alone, but let's see how the rest of this pans out. Chase, what do you got?
Yep, I agree with you. The grief muscle is powerful, but we see grief when she's talking about her innocence as well. So it's an unusual place to see it. And that this grief innocence has been what gained her the primary three things since childhood, which is compliance, control, and social reward. We get what we want from other people. And when she says that's a lie the second time, it's rare to see it, especially in a video that's older than 5-6 years old. There's pupil dilation. There's about 1.5 to 2 millimeters worth of pupil dilation, and this is part of our nervous system. And especially, this is some research. If you want to look this up, this is Kupkova. This is very recent, 2017. This is the most recent study I found. That pupil dilation is directly associated with high levels of stress and deception. Oh. And there's no emotion as she initially recalls the first thing she said to her child. None. And then I think she realizes when she says the second part of this, she realizes, oh, I forgot to turn that on. And I think as far as, Mark, what you were saying about the camera lens, her whole life, from a person like this, her perspective, I personally believe there's some psychopathy here. That her life is a camera lens. Every person who looks at her feels like a camera lens to her.
That's exactly what I think about her. I mean, and again, go back and listen to what her husband said to the police officers when they first got there about looking at her great boob job that she got. I mean, this is real facts that are in this case. It is ridiculous. I mean, what about these babies? How the hell could she do this to those babies? I'll never understand it, but here we go.
And I've got no research to back this up. but I've never once in my life seen a person go through an extreme emotional high of crying and feel the need to make eye contact at the same time.
Yes.
Because those two things don't match up. The high emotion and the drive for social connection are different, especially in this kind of environment. So I obviously didn't poll the guys here, but I would say when someone's freaking out, they don't care whether or not you're looking at them. They don't care what you think. They don't care what you feel. They're going through their own stuff. And there's no vocal tremors towards the end. When there's high emotion, there's high crying. This is another autonomic nervous system response for stress, grief, and crying. There's none. So listen to how smooth and perfect it is. Even with the tears and everything, I want you to hear how smooth it is, which is another high indicator of deception. Greg, what do you got up there?
I agree with all that. If you look through, if you watch everything she does, the pupil dilation is one of the best. This video has all of these videos. You can see her pupils dilate, which is a good indicator, by the way, of stress, that something's happening, and typically negative stress. There's actually a study, and I'll have to find the name and I'll put it down in the comments. There's a study recently about psychopaths and pupil dilation. And it says that their pupils dilate to pleasant things like everybody else does, but they don't dilate to negative things. There's no pupil movement to negative things, which we expect. We expect that people, when they see something negative, their pupils go, oh, unless it's a threat. If it's a threat, they open to get more data about what's coming. So it is interesting to see your pupils dilate. One of the more interesting things to me, and Mark, I say the camera stare is creepy as hell in my notes, is exactly what I say. And if you're trying for pleasant and likable, that's one thing to take out of your repertoire, is looking into the camera, because it doesn't look like you are. And Chase, right on. When I am crying about something like losing my kids, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you see. I don't care if I'm snotty-nosed and sitting there, because it's internal and it's all about me. It's emotion. It's not about me. It's about the person I lost. It's all tied to me as a person. It's not about you and how you perceive me. I don't care. None of us do. And more importantly, this is even weirder. When we start to cry, guess what most of us do? We break eye contact, because it's awkward and unpleasant. You'll notice that people, when they start to tear up, instinctively look up and to their left to break that pattern of what's causing them. And that breathing changes that we don't see here. She wells up, really, I call it going down the well. She works to go down the well to find the emotion. And then as soon as she balls that tear up and it starts to reach the edge of her eye, then she makes eye contact. Really weird way of doing. Now, does any of the...
Let me tell you what I'm going to say about the study he's talking about. Okay, so there's a research shows that individuals with high psychopathic traits display significantly reduced or entirely absent pupil dilation when exposed to frightening, graphic, or negative stimuli. In typical persons, the autonomic nervous system triggers an involuntary fight or flight response to alarming sights or sounds, widening the pupils to let in more light. Because psychopaths possess a unique emotional deficit, their bodies do not register these threats normally, leaving their pupils unmoved. That's what he's talking about right there. I find that very fascinating. Here we go, guys.
Does mean that she killed her children? Not at all. I think what we have to remind people is that all these are symptoms we're studying. And if I were sitting across the table, it would give me my next step. It would be like, oh, well, hold on a minute. What are you crying about right there? And I'd poke on her a little bit and make her uncomfortable, and maybe then be friendly, whatever it took. But they're red flags for us to look into and say that is not a normal behavior. It doesn't mean that she killed anyone. Could mean that she's just feeling sorry for herself. But there's a lot of other stuff that you look at. As Chase is fond of saying, we're not the forensics panel. There's a lot of looking for footprints, looking for other people. The last thing I'll leave you with is go look at the cop. This is a cop. This is a guy who's there at the scene. Watch his swallowing. This guy's impacted, and this is later about watching this little boy die. Yeah. I expect the mother to be at least as impacted as a cop. I don't see that. Just me. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go against you guys on the emotion shown in the forehead, because, and I'll go ahead and say it, I think we're dealing with a psychopath, and I'll explain more as we go along. Now, what we're seeing up there is what she thinks is the grief, emotion of grief. So that's why we see those eyebrows coming together and pushing like that, because she thinks that's what she thinks it's in and up, where this should come down and make that upside down horseshoe. We don't see that. It gets close because there's a lot going on in there, but she doesn't pull that off. And I think she's looking down the barrel of the camera. She looks right down the barrel because, like you guys were saying before, she's practiced that. That's rehearsed. That's right. When psychopaths find out they're psychopaths, when they realize they're different from everyone else, a lot of times it'll go down like this. For example, and this is like the example, like a Robert Hare example. He's the Elvis of psychopathy. Now, if you're a psychopath and you didn't know it, you'd probably live, if you lived in Nashville, you probably live on 2nd Avenue. Downwards, a lot of stuff going on. It's where the bomb went off this year. And so, because it's always very active. Most likely you won't live in a little small town. You're gonna live in a bigger town where there's action going on, because you really don't feel anything. You don't realize you don't feel anything, but the rushes you get come from adrenaline, sex, and drugs. Not that you're gonna be a drug head or out being promiscuous, but you'll want something to make you feel something. And you realize that people being around a bunch of them will give you that feeling. Now, let's say it's Saturday night and you say, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have Chinese food for supper. So you go outside and you go downstairs and you're downstairs and you're walking down the sidewalk and you come upon a scene. You see down there's an ambulance, there's a bunch of police cars, a bunch of people standing around, and you come walking up on that and you know something important's going on. You're not sure what it is. And you come up on there and you see the mother, she's all bent down over a little child who's been run over by a car, and the child is dead.
Oh, God.
And you see the mother and you see the child laying there, you know the child's dead, and you understand it's important. And then you look at the scene, you see all these people with this look on their face of concern. You don't know it's concern, you just know it's a look. And then you say to yourself, sweet and sour chicken. I'm gonna get sweet and sour chicken. And you go get sweet and sour chicken. You come back and you pass.
Here's the thing that we know. Now, we talk about psychopaths and sociopaths a lot on this channel. We have, because that's something I like to talk about is and how it relates to crime, etc. What we do know, and this is proven, we read books about it, etc. People like Darlie Routier, and they mimic other people. Once they know that this is what's wrong with them, they figure out what makes them look normal, and so they start to mimic what other people would do, etc. The crying, the snot, and all of that. That's exactly what he's talking about. It's that mimicking thing. She doesn't really have the feelings that you and I would have about our child who's now deceased. She's mimicking what she thinks she should be doing. Here we go. We'll keep listening.
That scene one more time on the way home. You eat your sweet and sour chicken. About an hour later, most of the time, you'll find that person, or they'll find themselves in the bathroom in the mirror, trying to imitate the emotions they've seen on the mother's face, because they don't know what that is. They've seen other people do it, but now it's one of those things where you're in your early 20s and you go, I'm going to check that out. Not that you have the feeling something's wrong with you. You won't have that, but you'll know you're different from everyone else. And to be able to fit in and be able to work your way through people and society and take advantage of everything, that's what you're going to have to do, is be like those people. So they'll be in there practicing, and I think that's what she's done. She's been practicing these emotions maybe since she was in her early 20s or mid 20s, and that's what we're seeing. That's why, Mark, you're right, she looks right down the barrel, because she's checking herself to see how it looks and saying, yeah, well, look at this, because that's what she's doing to herself in the mirror. So I think it's just a click back to that. As she's doing it to make sure it's cool, she looks over at the camera and makes sure you see that. So I think we're dealing with a psychopath here.
And not that all of them practice these things to be deceptive. They're practicing it because they feel, I'm not like those other people. I need to be. In 99% of the cases, psychopaths aren't all killers. They're high functioning people. So it's typically not a negative thing that they're going up and saying, oh, I need to study this so I can manipulate people. It's typically feeling outcast, like you were saying, Scott. Like I didn't feel the same as they felt, and I'd like to fit in.
Well, it's a wiring issue. It doesn't mean you're going to be violent. It doesn't mean you're going to do. Yeah, it's just a wiring issue, right?
Yeah.
Every time you tell that story, Scott, I think there's a punchline somewhere in there.
Sorry, I should get one.
I feel like it's a long setup for a joke.
Okay, I'll give you one. I got one.
I feel like sweet and sour chicken now. That's my problem with the story. Is you're telling the story and I'm like, yeah, actually, sweet and sour chicken would be actually quite good right now.
It does sound good.
We almost did Chinese last night.
Yeah, here there's no Chinese within 20 miles. So
yeah, I'm doing hot chicken after this. Patty B's.
You and your hot chicken.
I love it.
The prosecution made much of Darlie's inappropriate behavior. For instance, the first policeman on the scene testified Darlie didn't seem concerned about Damon.
He's got his eyes open, and he's trying to breathe.
Sad.
I told her that she needed to help him, but she just wouldn't help him.
That's a lie. There's no other words to use. That's a lie.
She says she comforted Damon.
I told him to hold on. I told him to be strong. And he said, okay, Mommy. He shook his head.
I don't think he answered her. I think that's a lie.
That was the last words I ever heard him say.
The prosecutor says, here is a woman who was depressed, gained weight, postpartum depression, behind in the mortgage, financially strapped.
I was a normal person just like anybody else. A normal mother that has normal, just normal like everybody else, doesn't go to sleep, and all of a sudden just snap and become a psychotic maniac killer.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So I'm going to keep this one simple. Normal, 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 normal. I don't know how many times she said it, about 14, I think.
Remember this, Letitia Self said the same type of language in one of the interviews that she did. She said the same thing. And remember that. Here we go.
I'm making that number up, by the way, so don't try to count and correct me. But normal, normal, normal. What I would do is lean over, if I were you and I'm talking to somebody who says normal, 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 that much, I'd lean over and say, Darlie, what's normal to you?
Yeah.
I want to know what a base for normal is, because I certainly don't see it. She goes down that path, and this is classic chaff and redirect. I'm going to use a word, and I'm going to sling it out there until you bite. And if you don't hear it the first time, you hear it the 14th time. There's a lot of pupil dilation when she's questioned here. I mean, you see You see your pupils dilate. And Chase, I love this one because I'm a big fan of pupil dilate. Also, having a video this old and having the capability to see it, because I think she's been in prison about 20 years. I would lean into her and say, is it normal to go to your child's grave with silly string? I would probably go down right there to see, because I'm going to tell you, there's some negative stuff that if you poke on it a little bit, you'll get to see it. And we'll see it coming up. So normal, chaff and redirect. She's trying to get you to bite and say, well, yeah, of course that's normal. Of course, if you're normal and that's normal, there's no way you wake up kids. There's not a denial of anything. Look, I had life. I had this, I had that. We don't hear, look, I didn't kill my kids. It's that no normal mother wakes up and kills her kids. And that's it. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I agree with you 100%. And we're seeing smiling. She shouldn't be smiling anywhere in here. And when she's just cranks right open with smiling right there. And why she's saying all this is because this is what she's heard. And as a psychopath, she's saying this is normal because she's heard that would be normal for it to act that way. So right down the path of a psychopath, and from where I'm coming from. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, let's just recap her words really quick, since I like to do this in every stinking episode.
I love that, actually.
In order of appearance: normal person, like anybody else, which is you. Normal mother, normal, like everybody else. Psychotic, maniac, killer. She's drawing a big distinction there between those two things. And I think there's two reasons that she's using the word normal. Number one, advice of counsel. And this is him not saying you need to hammer on the word normal. It's him saying you need, because the lawyer knows. I think the lawyer knows that there's something very different about this human being. And he's given her advice. You need to come across as a normal person that can relate to anybody. You're just like anybody else. So she took the words literally and fed them back. The second reason, I think she's using this because she's unknowingly ashamed or trying to cover up some psychopathy in this moment here. So she's not telling normal, she is selling normal in this instance. And I think that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing all this normal stuff followed by this drastic thing that she does not identify with. I mean, all of us have talked to killers. They don't identify as killers.
Okay, that's very important. That's very important. Remember, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, I do not identify as a murderer. She murdered her mother. She orchestrated the whole thing. I don't care who used the knife. She orchestrated the whole thing. Let me show you something else I found, guys. Okay, so I wish I could. Now we're going to let this play, but I'll come back to it in just I think it's on YouTube. Hang on a second. Just a second, guys. Now, hang on a minute. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to go back over here, and I'm going to play this. We're going to play Letitia Stout real quick, and I want you to listen to her say, I had everything. Why would I kill Gannon? The same thing Darlie's saying. Here we go. Let's share the screen, guys. All right. Thank you for being patient while I pull this up, because it's so important, because all of these people are the same. They're all sociopaths, psychopaths, and this is from KKTV 11. Here we go. Okay, y'all.
Continues into week 2. And today, a former 11 News reporter took the witness stand who had an exclusive one-on-one interview with the murder suspect. We've told you Letitia Stout is accused of killing her 11-year-old stepson Gannon in 2020.
Let's turn to 11 News reporter Melissa Henry, who's been following this day after day at the El Paso County Courthouse. Melissa, that exclusive interview that aired on our station, originally on KKTV years ago, was just played in the courtroom today.
Adam, that interview happened about 3 years ago, just days after former KKTV 11 News reporter
listen carefully to what she said.
Told the jury he was in the neighborhood where the Stout family lived, named Lorson Ranch, to cover the search efforts for Gannon Stout at the time. He says that's when Letitia Stout pulled up next to him in a white van and criticized his reporting on that search. He says she seemed angry at the fact that reporters were there to cover it. That's when Wilson asked Stout if she was willing to talk about her concerns on camera and let the community know what her message was at the time. She did agree, but had her back facing the camera. Wilson told the jury that in that interview, Letitia Stout's behavior raised red flags.
And this was the thing that was the most interesting to me, and why I remember it so much, is that I asked, is there anything that you would want to say to Gannon? She said yes, gave her statement, and I said, okay, we got it. And then she said, you know, what if we did that one more time? And I said, sure, whatever you want. So I went back, turned the camera back on, but this time she was crying.
See that?
And she was not crying the first time, and her demeanor completely changed.
That's right. It
As
sure
was
did.
pointed out
Okay.
by one of the defense attorneys this afternoon, Letitia Stout did say the reason she didn't want her face to the camera at the time was because she.
Anyway, all right. I mean, just remember Letitia Stout, because she is just like Darlie Routier. We're talking about the same type of person right here. Let's get back to where we were. I love these guys over here. You know who else? We need to see the deception detective take a look at Darlie. That would be great as well. Here we go. All right, guys.
You know, you're watching this now. Imagine you just did something you probably shouldn't have done, but you know that you're not a killer. You're not going to go kill a bunch of other people. It was just a one-time mistake, and that's what we're going through this rationalization process as a criminal does. Of I don't belong in jail. I'm not a bad person. This was a one-time thing. I lost control. I had too much to drink, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think she identifies with this at all. But I think that there's some Jungian shadow stuff that we definitely don't have time to get into. Scott,
Mark.
Yeah, I do have time for the Jungian. So no, I don't have time for that. But look. Here's what's interesting for me, though there's a lot of cutting in this interview, which is a bit annoying. And there's a cut in this that could go against what I'm saying right now. But essentially, her language doesn't differentiate enough for me between the accusation and the denial. It all kind of mashes into one, so that the net of it is her denial sounds very much like a confession. Now, it could be some of the cutting in that there could have been a re-representation of the question. So it could be about that, and we could say that. And it could be that just her language skill is very, very low, which goes back to the earlier question I had for everybody, you know, I think maybe off camera, which is, do we have any understanding of what her mental age is diagnosed as? And then we had a little bit of this discussion about this cultural idea from her particular locality of presenting yourself in quite an infantile or juvenile way. Okay, so yeah, we put it down to that. Will you culturally develop a low-level language style in order to fit in and present yourself in such a way, or is that your mental age right now, or the possibility that there is almost a Freudian slip of the tongue, which causes your denial to actually be a confession? And it sounds very much like that to me. Go back and listen to what she says, and it feels very much like she's actually saying that she did this rather than not did it. Anyway, and then there is this idea of well, you know, we get a lot of theme coming up of the possibility of acute psychosis, which is when stuff happens and you just don't know that it happened. Acute psychosis, you're right, people's eyes will go pretty wide like that when acute psychosis happens. So they're like, oh, I don't know what happened. Many murders happen like that, you know, very ordinary murders where people see red, they lose it completely. Yeah, they're violent. And then after the fact, it's like, I just can't remember what.
Thank you, Ponin. Okay, it's fine. Thank you for coming in. You know, I love to see you. Have a good evening, too. If you get a chance, just come back to the rest whenever. I just want to get through this, and then I probably will come back on Tuesday because my husband is off on Monday, and I didn't realize it. I forgot Memorial Weekend. Anyway, I'll see you later. Thank you. We'll keep going.
Happened there. Can't remember what happened. That's often an acute psychosis. So there's an idea that she puts forward of psychosis there. Maybe she's heard that talked about. Maybe a doctor's come in and talked to her around that. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, that's what I got on that one. And I think we're all done.
One note to add back, when we talk about language use, you have to take into account culture. You have to take into account a person's education level and just how they use language. For example, what is this? It's a pen, right? Well, I'm a deep South boy. This is a pen. There's the pig pen. There's a straight pen. There's an ink pen. We add words because the way we pronounce letters and the way we do things. There's also common usage in parts of the South. And Scott, you always say what you can tell who I'm hanging around with because there's common usage that we drop consonants off the end of words and that kind of thing. So you have to take into account where she's at. She's also now in prison, and whatever language she's using, culture matters. So we have to pay attention to word patterns in that as we're talking about this. Yep.
The prosecutor says, here is a woman who was depressed, gained weight, postpartum depression, behind in the mortgage, financially strapped.
I was a normal person just like anybody else. A normal mother that has normal, just normal like everybody else, doesn't go to sleep, and all of a sudden just snap and become a psychotic maniac killer.
Right. Bill Parker, a veteran interrogator who tried without success to get a confession out of Darlie. He insists she did say repeatedly,
if I did it, I don't remember.
You did apparently say during that interview with the policeman that if I did it, I can't remember.
No, I did not. I never said that.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Oh, bet she did.
Yeah, so look, in this one, I haven't got much to say on this because it's he said, she said, and then she said she didn't say it. So, and it's like, okay, well, where's the recording? Like, all you need is a recording. If there was an interrogation, it's like you press record. What, did you not have recorders at that point? So you know, I'm not really enjoying this one particularly, other than she says, well, if I did, I don't remember. Oh, so there's a possibility then. There is a possibility. Okay, there's a nice opening of possibility around that, and I don't remember, and so we're back there to a potential, you know, either that's a lie, I do remember, and I did do it, or it is an acute psychosis. It's like, I just don't remember. It could have happened, and I blacked out at that point. It can happen, though that might be, I don't know the system that she's in, but that might be actually quite a good defense for not getting a death penalty. I don't know. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. We're not seeing any anger, not seeing any disgust, no contempt, nothing like that. And she's not contracting. Now, you don't contract your words every time. By that means she says, I did not. She may say, no, I didn't. I did not. You might say that I did not later in the second half of that, but you wouldn't say it right out of the gate.
Okay, you know, the theme of our show was talking about postpartum depression and Michelle Kehoe and how she was trying to claim that that's why she killed her kids, and that she had tried on multiple occasions to actually kill her children, etc. Well, now here's the thing about this. Darlie Routier's family members described her depression as mild and temporary. Prosecutors in some analysis argued that her emotional instability was more significant, pointing towards a journal entry written around that time. Because, you know, I was looking at this, did she ever display postpartum symptoms? You know, did Darlie have postpartum symptoms that were maybe never discussed? Anyway, let's keep going.
I don't think, because that should come with an emotion with that, and she's not showing the right emotion with that. She should come across and say, no, I didn't. No, I did not. I did this, and this, and it should be a little bit faster, and she should be revved up about that. That's one of the things that in an interrogation, when you go in and you start poking on somebody, as Greg says, you get them to that level. She's not coming to that level. That's a poking right there, man. And she didn't. It's not that she didn't take the bait, but she should have come back with no, I didn't either. It wasn't me. A lot of times you'll hear that. That's why I always say it. No, I didn't. I didn't either. That wasn't me. So she contracts where she shouldn't contract. A lot of times you'll see in these famous cases from O.J. Simpson and other ones where they say, they'll say, I did not, or I did not do this. Did you do that? No, I did not. Because you can watch in the monitors. If you watch someone in the room waiting on you, you can hear them on there, and they know you're going to say, did you take this? You can hear them say, no, I did not. No, I did not. You can hear me rehearsing it. Not every time, but every now and then you'll catch one of those. So,
who else said, no, I did not? Alex Murdaugh. No, he did not kill him. He didn't kill him. He was not family annihilator either, was he? You didn't kill him? No, he didn't. Alex Murdaugh. Yes, you did. Here we go. Let's keep going.
So, Chase, what do you got?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Big influence.
Bill Clinton.
Great example. So I'll give you a piece of ammunition you can use against people like us. One of the worst things, and I can't tell you the other ones. I won't tell you the other ones, but one of the worst things you can say to an interrogator is, I don't remember. There is very little an interrogator can do. That's one of the hardest things for people like us to overcome. We can't say, oh, well, yeah, you do. You have to be, and it's very hard to prove. So people who come in with that I don't remember, I blanked out, because if I have a memory problem, that's the best way. It's either I rehearsed this elaborate story, set up a bunch of evidence, or I just have some amnesia. That really helps. It really helps guilty people. There's pupil dilation right before the denial at least a minimum of 1 millimeter. I tried measuring it on my iPad Pro today with a little Apple Pencil, and I couldn't get it because she was moving around too much. There's an eye flutter with the denial and a non-contracted denial. I did not. So just let's go by the numbers. BTOE, behavioral table of evidence, that's a 12. Greg?
I agree with you guys. All this stuff coming together. She does have a blink rate that goes up. She has an increased blink rate. She has more emotion, more denial than she had about killing her kids when she was normal. Go back and watch video 3 and compare to this, and look and see. She looks a little more pissed about this than she did about killing her kid. That just seems out to me. It feels awkward. It feels out of place. Her pupils do indeed dilate, and then they pinpoint that flash that you see. I love that. It's one of the best indicators that stress is hitting somebody. And I've told you guys before, the only time I've ever actually hurt anyone with words was seared guys. And when your pupils start flashing, it's time to give them a little bit of a break. So backing away from it. She does her approval when she's saying, I did not. Well, I would just say, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do it. But everybody talks a little differently. And I think, Chase, what you're just hammering on, there's enough here to say something is causing her to have raised fight or flight, whether she's pissed about this. And I'll go all the way back to when she first was interrogated and he was doing this. That's a great opportunity for you to delay his time and for you to put him to work. Say, I don't remember. I could have, but I don't remember. Well, I could have. I probably would never say. Advice to you: if you're ever accused of a crime, don't say I could have, but I don't remember. I don't remember is good enough. Don't add that caveat in there. And she's got that kind of look like we're starting to ramp her up just a touch. We'll get to see a little more ramp up as we go. But here, I just see, not enough denial earlier. She's going out of her way to deny this a lot more. Maybe she perceives this as the threat versus not being normal or whatever it was she's talking about in video 3. But video 3 is about stabbing your children, not about how you behaved in interrogation. I might say, yeah, I don't know what I said in interrogation. I would probably, in fact, say that because that was a stressful moment. I don't know where I was going. And Chase, like you, I'm not going to give any more details than that. We'll keep it there.
Bill Parker, a veteran interrogator who tried without success to get a confession out of Darlie. He insists she did say repeatedly,
If I did it, I don't remember.
You did apparently say during that interview with the policeman that if I did it, I can't remember.
No, I did not. I never said that. If I had done this to my children, I would be the first person to stand up and say, oh my God, I need help. What have I done? You know, a mother couldn't live with herself.
But now, Darlie, they're saying that you could live with it because you're a psychopath.
Wow, to hear that? Right there it is. Now you're saying that you're a psychopath? Really? You see, I mean, you can tell that, listen, it's so easy to see in her face, and they're exactly right. They're telling you what she is. Sociopath, psychopath, whichever one it wants to be. They know that she's lying. Here we go. I think this is a great interview right here.
And that you could kill and not have a conscience.
Sure, that fits their theory.
All right, I'll go first on this one. What we're seeing here, and this is one of my favorite things, is when you go in with someone, when you go and talking to someone, you'll say who's suspected of, let's say, stealing money or something. Hey, what do you think should happen? Because they're worried about their job, they're worried about everything. You say, what do you think should happen to somebody that did something like this? And they'll say they need help. They really do. They never say
go to jail.
Fire them. They should get rid of them, man. Get them out of here. We don't need that. They're a thief. They always say things. Quite often they'll say they need help and they need a good talking to. Sit down and talk to them. Go over all their, because if they did it, they don't want to say kill them. You know, stick them, hang them, shock them. Whatever you're going to do, get them out of here. Let's get rid of them. Never do that. That's classic right there. And at the end, you can see her getting all fired up. I'm gonna leave that to Greg because I know you've got that covered. She removes herself from all this by saying a mother wouldn't. She doesn't say, I would never do something like that. Those are my kids. She doesn't involve herself in this. She's putting it on somebody else, this other a mother. It's just bizarre behavior for a normal person, for a mentally normal person, when the brain's working the way it should. And she's doing it because she doesn't know it sounds odd.
You know what, and you know what, I agree with him. Well, I mean, even Gypsy Rose Blanchard, I'm going to show that little piece of the video here in just a minute too. But even her, well, remember, Dr. Mark Feldman told us that basically, yes, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a sociopath. So, I mean, every one of these people that are able to take the lives of people, of their family members, they're all the same. You know, they're all the same person. They're just male or female, but they do the same things. Here we go. And they always repeat their behavior. Don't get it wrong. They always repeat their behavior. Here we go.
It sounds completely normal to her. She doesn't think that sounds weird. She doesn't think it sounds odd at all. Not even a little bit. She's selling it. You know, she's way into it. So this is just, I don't have a lot to say on this because we're dealing with a psychopath. And what are you going to do? These are classic behaviors of a psychopath. Greg, what do you got?
This is real Darlie starting to come out. This is real Darlie starting to come out. You start to see that she gets a little pissed. Narcissists get pissed when you point out flaws and that kind of thing. And so we all know that all psychopaths are narcissists. Doesn't mean that all narcissists are psychopaths. And Chase, I know you were going to jump on this, and all of us are going to mention it. I call this a self-stated punishment judgment. You know, I would need help. Well, if I was saying that, I'd say I'd need my ass killed or beaten with an axe handle, whatever, right? I wouldn't say I need help. That maybe that is a cry for help. Who knows? But certainly, anybody who killed your children, you don't think they need help. You think they need gone.
Definitely.
Gone. Even the kindest of people are going to say they need to be gone. She eye blocks when she's saying that. If you notice, she looks away, and her pupils, again, these pupils are moving constantly on her. And the last one I will go with is when she says, sure, that fits their narrative or that what they want to believe or whatever she says in those exact words. That's her coming out. That's her raising her claws, and she's getting ready to say something. I would have leaned over and said, everybody thinks that you did it. And in the interrogation room, then she would get pissed off and I'd say, everybody said you're a psychopath. And you know how we know? And then start pointing out how we know she's a psychopath. And then you would see the mask move, and then you get to see anger and all that stuff that comes with it, because now the organism is not being successful. And like I say, whatever works, works, and you keep doing it. When it stops working, you always say the slip of the mask, Chase, when all those subroutines they have that worked don't work, then the things that are instinctive come to the surface. It's why Chase and I spend our lives learning where to put your fingers and not thinking about that when the time comes. You know, when you're in a military unit, the best thing I ever learned from SEALs that I take into business meetings every day is it's not how you shoot, it's if you shoot. Don't spend time thinking about how you shoot. Everything needs to be muscle memory. And every one of us as successful organisms has a lot of subroutines and things we're walking around using every day. When we get out of that thinking brain, we get out of that behavior pattern that's normal, and that cat brain comes up, all that other stuff comes out. And that's where we get them, is we push them to the point that all that other stuff comes out. Right here, you're seeing just a sliver of that, I think. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so one of the subroutines that you would expect to be running in any social mammalian brain that is well positioned would be looking after other people. And so if somebody says, hey, what should happen to that person who may have killed some kids, even the kindest person is going to go, okay, well, they need locking away somewhere. They need to be outside of society, because they would worry that it would happen to other people's kids, because we're designed, as social mammals, we're designed.
Remember Letitia Stouch, when she was being interviewed by Johnny Griesling, remember that? He asked her, what do you think should happen to whoever did this to Gannon? And what did she respond? Think about what her response was. Because he knows, just like these guys know, how to push those buttons on Psychopath. Here we go.
To, yes, look after ourselves, look after our progeny, but look after others like us. She's not executing that subroutine at the moment, which is kind of interesting. So that starts to point towards the social part of her brain isn't quite functioning as we might hope or expect. Now, look, if I had done this to my children, I would be the first person to stand up. So that idea of being, I'd be the first person to admit to this, usually is best when there's a potential group blame. Okay, when there's a bunch of people that, and it's like, no, I would bring myself right forward. I would be the most to blame. Well, hang on. In this case of a mother murdering children, if you put your hand up for that, you would be the only person. So why do you use a group-based idea around this? Well, because you're trying to distance yourself and push blame around. So then we get it again in a mother couldn't live with herself. So again, this is distancing. It's attaching yourself to the idea of the mother, but you're not saying, I as a mother couldn't live with myself, or I'm a mother, I couldn't live with myself. It's going a mother. So distancing and projecting out towards others. And then when she's put forward this idea of a psychopathic theory, then we start to see the anger. We see the eyes lock, we see the tightening of the upper lip there. Anger starts to be produced because she's been putting out the option, I believe, of an acute psychosis theory that, like, I could have done it, I just don't remember, and there's all kinds of good reasons for that, but you could come down to, okay, acute psychosis, let's reduce the sentence. She doesn't like the psychopath idea. She's not going for that, which makes me feel like she understands potentially what that diagnosis means.
Absolutely,
what that diagnosis tends to mean at this level is a reduction in your status, which means you are no longer at human social level. When we say, hey, you're a psychopath, we're trying to reduce you to a subhuman level. People who are psychopathic really don't like that. They don't like being reduced to a subhuman level, because they also have a belief that they are bigger and grander and better than others. They've got more, they're bigger.
See, they're always better than everybody else. But see, here's the funny thing about the studies they've done. 1 in 25 people are a sociopath. 1 in 25 people. That's a lot of people with some personality disorders or narcissistic behaviors, isn't it? Think about that next time you're talking to somebody or a stranger, or, etc. Think about it. Here we go.
They're grander, they're smarter, and so that reduction.
We're talking about Lori Vallow,
really, really
Letitia Stouch. They're out there. They're everywhere.
Experience. Who we got next? Chase, what do you?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of you guys. And to Scott, to your point, you hear that all the time. Well, they definitely need help. I mean, definitely they should issue an apology to the victim's family, of course, like a written apology, a formal apology. We hear that all the time.
But they don't deserve jail.
And I think this is one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever heard in an interrogation. If you watch this really closely, she smiles at the suggestion of psychopath.
Sure does.
I had to watch it, admittedly, 3 or 4 times. I had to hold my finger down on that little slider button this morning. Well, we all upload these videos into a folder the morning that we record these. But you can see a smile at the psychopath remark. And the blink rate goes up the moment that she starts to correct that. She smiles and then realizes, I need to fix this. And Greg, to your point, one of the best quotes that I remember from my training is, when the crap hits the fan, you will default to whatever you have done 1,000 times or more. And like, our night vision is really complex. It's got some stupid little buttons on it when they should be giant buttons. It's hard to work. In the daytime, you're looking here, it's still hard to work. It's harder to work when it's 115 degrees, it's 2 a.m, there is no moonlight, and you're wearing gloves, and you're in trouble. So I mean, it's not just a weapon. You've got to run all kinds of stuff, and you've got to do that for hours and hours. So she's defaulting to what worked for her in childhood, and that's where we're forming all of these things. We're forming our personality. So this kept me alive, this got me results, and this made me suffer. So that's 1,000 hour, 10, 15, 20,000 hours that she's been practicing some of these things here. And that's all I got.
Cool.
If I had done this to my children, I would be the first person to stand up and say, oh my God, I need help. What have I done? You know, a mother couldn't live with herself.
But now, Darlie, they're saying that you could live with it because you're a psychopath and that you could kill and not have a
I'm
conscience
sure that
about
fits
it.
their theory. Happy birthday.
What really worked for the prosecution at the trial was this videotape of the party at the grave.
Happy birthday, dear Devin.
I asked Darlie to look at it again. Do you not say, as I do, oh, for heaven's sake, Darlie, chewing gum, smiling, spraying silly string,
Well,
and the jury wanted to see it over and over again. You still don't think it was wrong?
no, maybe it's not the way that everybody would choose to do, but I can guarantee you the last thing a guilty person would do was to do that.
That's the best.
That was funny.
Who's the dude on the side with his hands in his?
That's her
the
husband.
is it?
And he's like uncomfortable too, man. He's like, I don't know about this.
What about a silly string at a funeral of anybody, especially your own kids? That's 8 days after the kids died. 8 days.
Yeah, yeah, he's not happy. He's not happy.
Yeah.
Lord. All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I don't know whether you're going to include that bit that we were just talking there. So let's bring it up. Yeah, yeah. The dude there who I now understand is the husband, who is not liking it at all. Hands in pockets, uptight, head down. Like, he doesn't think it should be going down this way. Now, look, having said that, husbands, wives, partnerships grieve in different ways, and losing a child can be one of the things that will split you up. If you've lost a child and you stay together, that's really.
You know what? He's absolutely right. In most cases, when you have a family and there is a child has passed away, the husband and wife don't normally stay together because there's always this blame game that happens. Well, if you would have done this, then that would have happened. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. So, and especially when one of the persons is responsible for it and they end up going to prison. Well, now that's a whole different story. But he's right about that. They usually don't survive a child passing away. They don't stay together. There you go.
Really hard work. A lot of blame goes in all kinds of directions around this. So it's tough to keep that together. Okay.
It is.
So we could expect some kind of, fractioning there. And we don't know how she's going to respond to grief. So, there is a possibility. I can quite see it myself. Well, let's have a birthday party like the kid would have had a birthday party. There are some reasonable reasons for the video that we see. So I'm not going to look into that because it depends on your bias as to how you could look at that. The gum chewing, the smiling, if you bring grief into it, alone, it's a tough one to look at. However, the last thing a guilty person would do, and so we've got, again, this idea of thinking about what would a guilty person do? What wouldn't they do? And the idea of I'm being judged, the knowing that I'm being judged all the time, and I need to project the right image of what somebody, would do or wouldn't do in this situation, does have some resonance there of strong narcissism. Just that level of going back to her as the individual and going, let me not explain what was going on in my grief here, but let me tell you about how I understand how I'm being viewed. Now, having said that, further down the line, she might be media savvy and know, hey, I know what you're thinking about this. I was in court. They watched this again and again and again and again and made something out of it. So look, I guess what I'm trying to get across here is when you're thinking about behavior and you're thinking about body language, there's a lot of things you can start to look at before you ever come to going, what might the possibility be? So this alone, on its own, is never enough for me. But when you put it in the context of what we've already seen, doesn't look great. Doesn't look great at all. Scott, what do you got for us?
All right. We see when she says what the jury wanted to see that over and over. That's when we see that eye flutter kick in, and because that's like a punch in the face. She's like, "What?" As she's going through that. So this again is classic psychopath behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If you have I've never seen anybody have a party at a gravesite before ever. Whether
Okay, I kind of talked about this a while ago, and we have to stop every once in a while for fairness. But anyway, I can see going and making remembrance, maybe putting flowers out, something like that. But this full on party like this, that was a little too much. It was a little too much. And I don't know that it makes her look guilty or not guilty, but clearly something is wrong. There's a disconnect, absolutely a disconnect. Here you go.
The person is recently passed or years later. I've never seen that. I've seen people go out and have a picnic or something and eat there because they're under stress and they're like, which is a different situation. That they're not smiling the whole time. They're not dancing around and saying stuff and spraying silly string. She doesn't know that's odd. She thinks a lot of people are under the impression if you're a psychopath, you're brilliant. They think because of the movies, they think that psychopaths are just these really, unbelievably smart intellectuals. We're dealing with a psychopathic idiot in this case. This girl isn't smart. I don't care what anybody says. I think she's an idiot. So she said that's because when she says the last thing this person would do is that right there, and it kicks her eyes over and looks at it. You got to be kidding me. I mean, she doesn't know that's weird. She doesn't understand why that's not right. That's another thing it tells me one more time. It just clicks off another click for psychopathy. It's just odd. I mean, you can say, well, he's acting odd, so that says it. No, she's acting that way about that specific situation. That's why I think she's a psychopath as well. And I know Greg's got some stuff at the end there. So, Greg, what do you got?
So if I'm listening to this person talk, in interrogation, we call something a source lead. A source lead means somebody said something, I'm going to follow up. Well, guess what? I'm going to be like one of those little herding dogs on her heels right here. Because what kind of a person says, well, I'll tell you what, somebody who did this wouldn't do, they wouldn't do that. That tells me how her brain works. So the next question for me is, well, what would they do, Darlie? And I'm going to follow her circular logic and figure out how she came up with the idea to go have this birthday party and why. And that's through words, push-pull words, things that mean something.
I'd like to
they
know
genuinely
that.
Wouldn't do this. I want to know why she's thinking that. And that gives you an insight into her psyche. Now, she might just be really dumb and thought, hey, maybe my people will feel better about me if I do this because I've already gotten some scrutiny. Maybe that's who she is. But we always talk about real smiles, Duchenne smiles, and fake and nervous smiles. Go watch her face. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. Just watch her face during this when she's playing with a silly putty.
She smiled. She smiled.
Look, I've lost a child. 7 days later, you're not happy. You're not cheerful. I can't remember how long it took before we had a real smile again. It's just that devastating for people to lose two.
Greg Hart is exactly right, because no, you're not happy. And no, you're not able to go smile, and you can't even fake it. No. So, I mean, her response versus how the rest of us must respond is just totally inappropriate. I don't understand it, but here we go.
And then to go do a birthday celebration with those eyes certainly is cause for concern. Does it mean, again, Mark, people are different. Everybody grieves differently. Maybe it's there. But I don't expect to see genuine joy and those wrinkles around her eyes and all of those pieces that we're seeing.
Big smiles.
When I get into there and I start asking her questions and I say, so exactly what would a guilty person do? Then I'm going to run down a list and I'm going to start poking. And then I'll loop back and I'll bring up the fact she's having fun at the side of the grave, bring up the video and say, here's what I know here, here, and here. And I'm going to force that slip. I'm going to force that out of the rehearsed and into the natural person and what comes up. It's catch-22 to say that only a person who thinks that what a person who kills someone would do to hide, but it sure gets to a pretty interesting time when you start using words like that. So we have to be diligent. We have to try to use some guilty knowledge. We have to ask some questions, try to take her story apart. But man, that one screams, because that's exactly how a person who's trying to hide something would think. Chase, what do you got?
We're getting to the point of writing a book called If I Did It. At this point, where we're doing a little social speculation. And
see, I think that she thought, well, if I do this, this, and this, then it's certainly going to take the guilt off of me. Oh my God, how could they think I could do anything like this? Yeah, I'll never understand why she did it. What did she think she was going to gain? Is it like Alex Murdaugh, who did it to take away from what was fixing to happen? Because in Alex Murdaugh's case, it was fixing to come out that he had stolen all this money. So he needed to get some sympathy going for himself because his son and his wife had passed away before all of that came out. Is that kind of what's going through Darlie's mind? I don't know. It's strange. Here we go.
there's some rapid eye blinking here, which is kind of a TDS, transderivational search.
Yeah.
There's pretty solid movement down to this downward area down here, her 7 o'clock. And there's a lot of dissociative language here. And
dissociative.
She says this is the last thing a guilty person would do was to do that. And she's very certain. She says, I can guarantee it. She's very certain because she thinks that she's got stuff figured out. And she thought this through. She says, I can guarantee that's the last thing because I've thought a lot about this. I've watched 13 seasons of Murder, She Wrote. This would never happen. Or, whatever it is. I don't believe it. I don't believe this at all. I think there's probably some grief there. I'm sure she missed her kids. That was extremely unusual behavior at best at the graveside.
I agree.
Happy birthday.
Look at her smiling.
Really for the prosecution at the trial was this videotape of the party at the grave.
Happy birthday, dear Dylan.
I asked Darlie to look at it again.
God, she's still
do not
smiling.
say as I do, oh, for heaven's sake, Darlie, chewing gum, smiling, spraying silly string, and the jury wanted to see it over and over again. You still don't think it was wrong?
No, maybe it's not the way that everybody would choose to do. But I can guarantee you the last thing a guilty person would do was to do that.
All right.
Your husband's mother said to me, you said to her, wouldn't you want to see the person who did this die? Do you remember those words?
I do. And I still feel that way today.
But if it's you who dies.
I know the truth. I know what really happened. I know that somebody else did this. So if I'm put to death, I'll leave this world with a free conscience.
Whoa.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Okay, that statement right there made no sense. If I get put to death and I'm going to leave this world, think about what she just said. I can't wait to hear what they say. Let's go. Damn.
I don't have a whole lot on this one.
That's bad.
Her blink rate increases a little bit, but she's doing a romancer.
Yeah.
Staring right at the woman's eyes, trying to make sure she says the right thing. And all of her organism, all those successful behaviors are back. Yeah, I'm talking like this, and I'm going to be very innocent, and I'm going to be whatever. It just all comes up as she tries to do her whole convincing act and that thing. And then she gets into some circular logic that I have no idea what kind of sense that makes. None at all. So I'll die with a good conscience. But you wanted the person who's guilty to die for it. Well, I'll die with a good conscience. That's a resume statement of sorts, to use your thing, Chase. But it makes absolutely no sense. And then she says, I know what happened. That's a step. She almost steps in it, and then she corrects and says, that's somebody else, not some scumbag, not some, here you go again, Chase. People usually, there's your vanishing perpetrator. It's just random somebody. It's not that man that broke into my house at night, stabbed my children, cut my throat, and climbed back out the window. She almost steps in it when she says, I know what happened, and she quickly goes to fill it up. I think it's more this organism has been successful by being this innocent, shy, at times person. And then suddenly, when things don't go her way, I'll bet there's a
It's just like Gypsy Rose Blanchard. It's the same thing. That little baby voice that she was always getting away with everything because she was perceived to be that little baby voice. Come on. But you know what? There are times when you can hear Gypsy Rose Blanchard talking and she doesn't have that baby voice, does she? Here we go.
Different person. I'd like to see what her relationships, other relationships are like, and see what other people have to say. Because I guarantee you, angry Darlie is different from sweet and innocent Darlie. It'd be interesting to see that. And all of us are. I mean, anybody who gets angry is going to be different, but I would bet her anger is very different from this thing. So Chase, what do you got?
Okay, we're good.
When she says somebody else did this, I think there's some truth to that, because I think she compartmentalizes her behavior or dissociates her behavior to where she feels like that was another part of her that's responsible for this. And the part of her that's sitting there right now that's worried about going to prison does have a clean conscience. And I think that psychopathy, I'm not a doctor, psychopathy regularly adjusts itself and calibrates itself based on those things. That was a different part of me. It's not me right now. That's different. So that's why, as Scott was talking about sweet and sour chicken, that's when that stuff happens. It's a different part. When we should see some grief, we see pretend grief. We see people faking it. If you want to see grief, it should make a little V shape, like if Greg could demonstrate that little shape there. That's it.
Right there.
And we see some wonderful pupil dilation here in this video. It's really great. I think it's at least 2 millimeters of dilation, which means expansion. And this upward gazing, this downward head is something that was cool back in the days of Betty Boop and probably stuck around till Princess Di. And it's not a normal way of communicating anymore, especially for an adult. And I think her fake grief gives us a little bit more in that it's asymmetrical. And what I mean by this is the part of the brain that does real facial expressions. I guarantee you, you have never had a really enjoyable experience where you had to think about smiling. It happens automatically. So it comes from, let's say it comes from one part of the brain over here, but when we have to fake smile, it has to come from a whole different part of the brain. And that part of the brain is not as 6 million years evolved into bilaterally tightening the muscles on each side of the face. So false facial expressions are often asymmetrical because of that point. And I'll leave it at that. Mark?
Yeah. So remember when she recalled that emotion? I think it was in video 2, and that was good enough for me. Like, I had some empathy for her on video 2. There was enough information in that for me to go, oh, I really feel for you right now. So that's kind of interesting. Like, she's able to have a real emotion there or recall one and give me enough information so that my mirror neurons reproduce her face, not on my face, but internally, and I start to feel feeling. That's what happens when you have a good actor in front of you. Your mirror neurons start reproducing their behavior inside your head within the context that you've seen their story evolve as well. And they're not having the feeling anymore because, you know, it's probably on a film or TV. Their feeling went a long time ago, but you're having the feeling. It's a great kind of trick that happens there. This time around, I believe she tries to do it again and she doesn't manage it. We can see her, in my mind, I see her pushing for that emotion and it doesn't fall over the edge for her. It doesn't trigger and she decides to pull back on that and not go there. Now,
and you can kind of see that in her face as she's making that expression. She's talking to the lady, and she's talking about, well, I have a clear conscience. Well, how are you going to have a clear conscience if you're the one? Oh gosh, it made no sense. The interaction right there with that reporter. I don't understand why she would make those statements. But of course, these guys know why she made those statements. We'll let them finish talking. Here we go.
Now, how can she be, in my mind, like so good in video 2 and not so good here? And why would this potential psychopath be a good actor in the first place? Well, actually, you know, most
all good actors?
really good actors that I know are not neurally typical. You know, they have a brain which is often able to produce on command a controlled psychosis. They're able to be somebody else having an emotion in a situation that isn't really happening and it not tip over the edge so it's uncontrollable. When somebody says cut, they're able to stop. And when somebody says, hey, action, they're able to start it again. So they're able to go into a psychosis, but under control. And you need a certain mindset to be able to do that. I think she probably has an element of that mindset to be able to create that moment of imagination.
You know why? Because she's done it so many times in so many different situations in her life that she's had to do that. Again, because we know that sociopaths mimic other people and they mimic what they perceive to be considered normal. So they're going to do what the neighbor next door would do because that's perceived to be normal, or in their mind it's perceived to be normal. Here we go.
Imagination. That moment of storytelling, not quite good enough, not super professional enough to be able to do it again and again and again on command, because I think she fails here. That's all I've got for you on that.
It's me.
Scott, what do you got?
All right. She blames everybody else. And you all covered everything on this. When she says, do you remember what she said, when you like to see the person die? She says, I do. And then the interviewer just waits. And that's when she adds that part. And I still do. And I still feel like that. Hey, come on, man.
But she's going to die with a clear conscience.
I agree with you, Greg. I don't know what she's talking about, but I know what's happened there. She said she knows at the end of this, she's got to wrap up and say her thing. It's going to make her being a psychopath. She wants she wants people to think about it, remember. So she has to say something. Remember, we looked at Ramirez and he was saying all these quotes from everywhere. Everybody from Kafka to like Shakespeare and everybody else. And in this thing, she's rehearsed that ending, and you can see it because at that point she's performing this ending at the very end. Speaking of acting, Mark, so I was ready for that, and she had to get that out because she can feel it wrapping up, the interview wrapping up. So that's why I think she said. And she went on with that explanation. What the hell she's talking about? Her conscience is, she'll die with a clean conscience or clear conscience. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Your husband's mother said to me, you said to her, wouldn't you want to see the person who did this die? Do you remember those words?
I do. And I still feel that way today.
But if it's you who dies?
I know the truth. I know what really happened. I know that somebody else did this. So if I'm put to death, I'll leave this world with a free conscience.
All right, fellas. This is a good one. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
hit that little bell down there. You'll know we have new
let me
ones
show
coming
you
out.
something. Okay.
All right. Anybody else got anything?
Hey, do you want to pitch it around the rim on this one like we typically do?
Oh, let's do that. Yeah.
And we probably should up front say we don't care whether she's guilty or innocent. We're just looking to see what we see.
Well, I think we
it's
just
up to you,
did.
but for sure the wrap.
Yeah, let's just leave that in because that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Oh,
We're
it's
saying
just
what we see.
guilty?
All right, then I'll go first. We'll go around me. We'll end up with Greg. All right.
Okay.
I think we're seeing deception here.
That's
we're
right.
seeing someone acting, and we're seeing a psychopath trying to make itself look better and puts the blame on everybody else, remove itself from all the guilt, and it's classic psychopathic behavior.
Yes, it
Mark,
is.
what do you got?
Yeah.
Yeah, the same. A lot of good, I think quite good performance here, but too much going on that takes her away from the crime and positions herself in a place of no responsibility and no social responsibility. And so for me, it suggests a certain type of personality, which can be more than a little bit dangerous under the right circumstances. Chase, what do you got?
Yep, agree.
I think
We're
they
seeing
all agree.
just a bunch of clips from a sales pitch. This is a sales pitch or an audition, if you will. And we're seeing it from a person who may or may not suffer from a mental illness or have some kind of psychopathy involved here. Greg?
Yeah, what I see is, I don't know if it's psychopathy. I don't know exactly. We all would have to spend a little time with her. But what I see is the organism doing what the organism's always done until it doesn't have a tool to use. And then the person starts to show up. We all do it. Every one of us has our own subroutines we use.
Yeah.
I think you hit it good, Chase. When soldiers compartmentalized, everybody compartmentalized, everybody learns how to deal with things differently. And whatever's worked for her, whatever that little voice, all those things she's done, she uses. Until a couple of times in there, I see a little slip. I see a little place where I think I can bring the monkey to the dance. And when I get the monkey out, then I can start making that person respond to stimulus as opposed to whatever's been. All right, I'll back it up.
Well, I mean, it's just, we always say, bring the donkey to the disco.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what
you
you
always
always
bring it
say.
up.
We're going to let it stop there. And again, thank you to the behavior panel. I always like to listen to them because, they're spot on. They've seen enough of this to know exactly what's going on here. And so we know exactly what she is. We've always known exactly what she is. But we're going to end this with this final video. And this final video is going to be Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the other sociopath, saying, I do not identify as a murderer. So let's go ahead and watch that, and we're going to get out of here for today. Here we go, guys. Let me share the screen for you. It's right here. Hang on a second. And let me see. And this is going to be the hostess trend stage. Hang on. Here we go. So let me share the screen over here so you can see what I'm seeing. And it's going to be right here. We're only going to watch a few minutes of this, just where she gets to the point where she goes, I do not identify as a murderer.
The questions was like, how do you feel now that you're getting all this attention? But you're a murderer.
Oh my God.
So
In an interview weeks after being released from prison, Gypsy Rose Blanchard has explained why she doesn't identify herself as a murderer. Gypsy, now 32, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder over the killing of her mother Dee Dee back in 2015 and served 8 years in jail for her involvement in the crime.
Why do you plead to the Class A felony of murder in the second degree?
guilty.
The court finds that there is a factual basis for a plea of guilty. The court accepts defendant's plea of guilty and finds defendant guilty thereof beyond a reasonable doubt. She's to be sentenced to 10 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. She'll have to do 85% of her sentence before she's eligible for parole.
After enduring years and years of medical abuse at the hands of Dee Dee,
Okay.
Gypsy ended up persuading.
I'm going to stop that. I'm not going to show that part. I'll tell you why. Because Dee Dee did not medically abuse Gypsy Rose Blanchard. The FOIAs have come out, the truth has come out, and I'm not going to let them sit there and say that about Dee Dee. So we're going to move this forward to where she says, well, I do not identify as a murderer. Well, that's how we're going to finish this. So hang on just a second. Let's go find it right here because it was no medical abuse. None. So here we go.
I don't associate myself as a murderer.
Here we go.
Because if you think about it, yes, I had a part to play in it. I asked Nick for help. And how that conversation started was, he was saying that he would protect me from anyone. I said anyone. He said yes. I said even my mother. He said yes. And then the plan kind of formed from there. But he's the one that did the actual kill, not me. I can't kill anyone. That's why he's in trouble to begin with, because he's the one that did it. So when they say I'm a murderer, I don't identify as that.
Since being
now, there you go. There you go. And that is another sociopath right there. There it was, another sociopath. Anyway, guys, thank you for coming in today. I hope you enjoyed our show as we talked about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, the differences, and that Michelle Kehoe certainly did not suffer from postpartum depression. That is not why she took the lives of her children. I think the appeals were absolutely correct. So with that, I think we're going to say goodnight. Now, I'm going to tell you the next thing that we're going to talk about. Our next show is going to be on. Let me pull this up here so I can give you a little hint about it so you can kind of go look it for yourself, kind of learn a little bit about it, because it's going to be a death row case. And pull this back up. Come on. I don't know if I can pull this up over here. Oh, come on. I might not be able to do that right there. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just have to, let me look and see if I can find it over here. Hang on a second, guys. It's a death row case, and it's very interesting, and it's about his appeal. He is scheduled to die soon. June, I believe it's June the 2nd, he is scheduled to die. So with that, we're going to talk about that case next. Oh, I didn't put it on here yet. I haven't put it on here yet. Anyway, he's scheduled to die June the 2nd. So we're going to bring that to you on Tuesday. With that, I'm going to say goodnight. Take care of yourself. Be careful out there and go hug your babies. Life is short. Your time with them is even shorter. So see you later. Take care of yourselves. Bye, guys. Thank you. Please hit that like button. Bye.